All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to the Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here. Hope you had a good holiday weekend. And thanks so much for stopping by. Like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. We'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's always a link in the description. And I see we have Brian, Lanswath, Kevin, Wheatman, Vishal, and G. Krieger and B. Mitchell for all joining. Thanks so much, everyone. And looking forward to seeing everyone else here in a little bit. And I apologize, I'm a few minutes late. I see B. Mitchell pointed that out. Yeah, I'm late. I know. This time I was out to dinner with family and just got back a little later. And so didn't have as much time here to prepare. It's been a crazy whirlwind of a weekend, lots of busyness. But I hope you guys all had a good one. I see Brian says, my spot of the week was a Corvette C8 Z06. Very nice. Lancelot says, my only spot this week was a silver 911. Still nice. And I silenced my watch here. Wheatman says, good evening, and all auto enthusiasts on this Independence weekend. Yeah, hope everyone had a good one here, and hope it was good weather. It was very hot here, so very typical July weekend. Vishal says, what's up, all? My cool spot today was an AMG GTS driving in the rain. Very nice. Let me see. Krieger's not a fan of the C8s there. Let me see. Lancelot says, but it's a dry heat. Yeah, hopefully most places it's not humid like it is here in Pittsburgh sometimes. And B. Mitchell said, kind of a sucky car week for me. Got a puncture on the 19 Mustang GT, unable to fix, sidewall damage, and the 78 Lincoln has a power steering box leak, so no real spots otherwise. Well, sorry to hear that. Yeah, it's always not fun. I had two. One at least was fixable. The other one, I just had to replace the tire and the bullet, But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Mustangs get more flat tires, or maybe we just have bad luck. I mean, it's one of those things that happens, but I had gone years with not getting any flat tires, and then I got two in the bullet. And knock on wood, haven't had any since. Aside from, I did have an E-Ray press car last year that strangely I picked up a nail and had a slow leak in, but that was about it. My spots of the week, I actually just saw everything here tonight because everyone was out. Beautiful, summer night here. And so we were out actually getting some ice cream after dinner and saw a bunch of cool stuff drive by. There was actually an Integra Type S following me. That was really nice to see in white. There's also like a early, I don't know my Camaros very well, but it's an early 70s, like the pointy nose Camaro, like blue, bright blue, and sounded really nice. That was a cool spot. What else did I see? A couple other cool ones. There's a nice 6th-gen Camaro I saw. Yeah, nothing crazy exotic or anything like that though this week. So just some good muscle cars and a couple of classics there. Let me see, viewer. Also, Lancelot, thanks so much for gifting 10 memberships. Sorry, I just saw it. Thanks so much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. Every week, every stream almost, Lancelot is gifting memberships to people. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. And we will actually have a member car of the week here. Again, it's been a little while. On Monday, someone submitted their bike, actually, Mutable Do. So you'll get to see that here if you're a member, and hope you guys are looking forward to everything that was on the schedule there that I posted this past week as well for the upcoming month here. But thanks so much again, Lancelot, for gifting those. He says it's my pleasure. Well, yeah, just appreciate it. And as you rightly should have, you have the crown, the #1 crown here on the YouTube leaderboard. I'm still not exactly sure how they decide all that, but it's very well decided here tonight because he is definitely the MVP of the live streams here. Thanks so much, Lancelot. Let me see. So viewer says, owning the 24 Mustang GT base with active exhaust. Wow, such an awesome car. I drove the S550 and it felt outdated after driving the S650. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the sharper steering is definitely a nice improvement for sure. The tighter chassis is certainly appreciated. Yeah, I mean, S650 is still a very nice upgrade as long as the price is right. And I'm glad you got a great price on yours. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Let me see. Triton Car Guy, thanks for stopping by from Arizona here. And Fuchs says, nice shirt. I appreciate it. Yeah, just because we were out at dinner, so got a little dressed up and figured might as well leave it on. And Raphael, thanks for stopping by. And Lancelot says, "Yeah, family's more important." Yeah, yeah, we had some good times, but I obviously, never want to miss these. So I wanted to make sure I was here roughly on time, a few minutes late. And Zachary says it must be warm out because on Friday I saw two Pontiac Solstice and a Saturn Sky. Nice. I'm glad that people are still driving those a lot and that they're, surviving. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I hardly ever see a Cobalt of that generation, for example. But thankfully, the solstices and the skies, especially solstice, I see a decent amount of, and I'm really happy that they have kind of survived. It's such a good bargain, both of them. I mean, I reviewed both of them last year finally, and I mean, you can get either one for under 10 grand. It's a lot of fun. You just want a fun little run around. It's a lot of car for the money. I really do like them. Even the non-turbo ones are great. And let me see, Raphael, thank you so much for a very kind super chat. First super chat of the night here by Raphael. So he says, the new Honda Goldwing has wireless Apple CarPlay. Notice the car companies, you have no excuse. It's very true. Yeah, I think I heard something about, one of these motorcycles you're having. So I'm curious how you feel as a motorcyclist having CarPlay in a motorcycle. Because I mean, I guess, yeah, if you're cruising and stuff, I guess it's not too distracting. It's, I'm always feeling like, whenever you're on a motorcycle, you have a little bit more to pay attention to. You have a little less of a grace period as far as, not staying on top of your game if you have to, be messing with CarPlay. But, I know a lot of people, they have phone calls, and they got their headsets and all that stuff. So that's cool. But yeah, absolutely. No car company has an excuse. And that's why I'm going to just keep on roasting GM and Rivian and Tesla and, anyone else who, I just, I won't go down that rant, but you guys have already heard it 10 times already, or maybe more. So, but no excuse. I agree. And thanks so much for the super chat, Raphael. And Sai's asking, do I watch F1? I do not. I don't have time to watch any sports. I wish I did. I actually really miss watching baseball. That was kind of the one I was brought up on. So I'd love to watch that more in the future, even though the Pirates aren't very fun to watch. But I just love the game. F1 would be fun for sure. And I didn't watch the movie, if you're referring to that as well. I don't know. I know everyone's been talking about that too. Haven't seen the movie. Haven't watched any of the racing really. I have gone to an F1 race, but funny enough, it's probably completely wasted on me. I actually enjoy it whenever I'm, able to have the time. And so I went to the Montreal Grand Prix, or the Canadian Grand Prix. That was in 2017, I think, 2018 with Shell. Had great, phenomenal seats. And I think we even got like a pit tour beforehand and stuff. Got to walk around Quebec. It was amazing. Love Quebec. I desperately want to go back ever since. So I have seen an F1 race, but I don't ever watch it on TV. But I'd like to get into it someday. I think it'd be cool. Is there televised rally racing? Because I feel like rally is still kind of where my heart is as far as racing goes. Just the craziness and the higher stakes of, being millimeters away from wrapping your car around a tree and stuff, to me is even like more intense than 200 miles an hour or whatever in an F1 car. And also one other cool anecdote for those who are F1 fans. I did, whenever I was in Maranello last year, they actually let us go into the like top secret lab where they like tear down the Ferrari Formula One cars after each race. And there was one like mid teardown that they were, analyzing and checking everything out. That was really cool. Cause I mean, obviously Ferrari, everyone is spending this kind of money. They take it very seriously. And so just even getting access to see that and check that out. Obviously wasn't allowed to take any pictures or videos or anything at all. But it was really cool to kind of see behind the scenes there a little bit of, what goes into it, even just in between, race weekends there. But let me see here. So thank you for the other two super chats here. So Why Itch, thank you so much for super chat. He says, what the heck? I just found out my S650 Mustang GT is faster in sport mode than track mode. What is the point of track if sport is faster? And go Blue Jays. Nice. So as far as, there's a few cars actually that set that up that way. My understanding, so I think Cadillac does this as well. And I think all the GM stuff, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't recall if it's the same reasoning in the Mustang, but some cars, I know the reasoning for that is because you need smooth inputs on track. Well, it was actually Charger EV. I was on track in that, and track mode is slower than sport mode. That's the one I was thinking of. Sport mode is actually way quicker throttle response than Charger EV. Track is really smoothed over, and I also like with the Cadillacs, whenever they're shifting, the shift logic is much slower in track mode, but it's smoother because again, you don't want to upset the balance of the car. It's all about smooth inputs, smooth shifting, and all that is very important, even if it's not the absolute fastest, because they assume that you are already kind of getting on it hard. So it's more that, I mean, anyone who, has done any kind of high performance driving knows smoothness is really important. And so having that really abrupt throttle kick in can upset the balance of the car. And that's not what you want in a true track mode. So, I know that to the usual enthusiast of track mode, sounds like it would be the craziest mode. And that's, and I think actually Throttle House complained about this a lot in the Charger EV review, whenever they did it as well. And I don't agree, because Dodge's logic and everyone else who does it this way, it completely makes sense. I mean, maybe they should follow Tesla and do some kind of ludicrous mode or some type of other mode that gives you all the insanity and kind of, so that people don't have this perception that track mode is supposed to be the craziest mode, but track mode is supposed to be the smoothest mode. Obviously, it should also be fast and also, be very tight as far as everything goes. But oftentimes, like track mode is, and this is another thing I discovered in Civic Type R whenever I was on the track at Sonoma and that for the launch of Civic Type R, is track mode, especially around Sonoma with it being such a bumpy kind of track and stuff. The track mode was the worst mode to drive Civic Type R in on track. You didn't want to be in track mode. Most people were driving in normal mode. Some people did individual and kind of tailored things a little bit. But for like the adaptive dampers, like you wanted those in the softest setting possible. And oftentimes you do want softer dampers on track, unless you are on a track that is glass smooth. Then great, have everything insanely stiff like an F1 car or something, and those kinds of tracks, great. But for real tracks, from my experience, at least, I could be completely full of crap here, but from my experience and other people that I have, done high performance driving with that I think are even smarter and better on track than I am, they're every time we like talk after lapping and stuff, like, oh yeah, like, it's too stiff in track mode, you got to soften everything up. And so I think car companies are kind of recognizing that at times. And so it's, again, all about trying to, custom tailor that. I mean, obviously, if you're really getting intense and you're wanting to custom dial in for a certain track, you can do either the custom modes there, or, people have coilovers and they dial those in or whatever. But but that's a modern track mode is, it's actually usually not the fastest these days. I think Porsche actually kind of does things that way too, if I remember correctly. I haven't reviewed any modern Porsches, but I just remember kind of picking that up along the way at some point. But yeah, and so a lot of cars are like that these days. Sport mode is actually the mode you want if you want to just like have fun on the street and you want all the response and all the craziness. That's usually the better way to go. And thank you so much for the super chat there. And glad you're enjoying your S650 though, and learning new things about it there every day too. That's awesome. And viewer, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, love this time of day. Sky looks beautiful in the background. Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you like it here. This sunset was really pretty tonight, and it has since mostly faded here. But yeah, it's we get some very nice sunsets. But I mean, we were at the beach a few weeks ago, and I mean, nothing beats a beach sunset, though, that's for sure. And thank you again for the super chat. And let me see, where were we here? So, see, Will, thanks for saying hi from San Diego, and Steven from Texas. Hope you're doing okay, Steven. There, I know there was the crazy floods in Central Texas there. Hope you're doing all right. And it's tragic what happened there here over the past few days. And Vishal says it's always humid in North Carolina, so summers can be pretty hot, many 90-degree plus days. Yeah, I've been in North Carolina in the summer, and South Carolina. I was in Savannah in the summer for a media drive a couple of years ago, I think. And yeah, Savannah, actually it was for GMC Acadia, and man, it was hot. That was a very very humid media drive for sure. And Kraken says, is the Wednesday Q&As new? You've been doing them for a couple of weeks now. Yeah, that's just something we added in a few weeks ago. I kind of, on one of these live streams, just kind of brought up the idea of doing them, and people seemed excited about it. And so, yeah, we just figured, Wednesday is kind of a good midway point throughout the week there And yeah, they've been a lot of fun. So I'm going to keep on doing them here, as long as I'm able to here, and as long as I'm around on Wednesday evenings, I'm going to be doing those. So yeah, stay tuned for the next one of those here on Wednesday. But in the meantime, B. Mitchell says, I never had a puncture when I had the C4 Corvette over 10 years ago, or over 10 years of driving. In the 6 years of owning the pony, 3 blown tires over 78,000 miles. Glad I popped for the optional get home donut spare tire. That's great that you got the spare. Because performance pack level 1, you can't even get it. Like Bullet, it wasn't even an option. They do make a spare in the aftermarket, I know is popular on the forums, that fits around the Brembos. I never went for it. I honestly should have, with how much highway driving I did, all the road trips I did in the Bullet and stuff. Thankfully, none of my flats happened far from home, aside from the one coming back from this Supra media drive. But it was like the most perfect flat tire, because I talked about this in a video, probably 6 years ago or whatever. But I was like driving, and I again must have just picked up a nail or something. I was on a little back road in Virginia, and I like get the notification on the dash, like, low tire pressure. I'm like, crap, I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't know where I was. I'm just following the navigation, and I like crest the hill, and there's an old time like service station right there, like that, does full service. It was the middle of the day or whatever, morning or something, and I like literally just coasted straight in. Was like, I literally just got a flat. Maybe they have a business going, because it was like too perfect. Maybe like every morning they sprinkle a few tacks on the road there and drum up some business. I don't know, but it was insanely perfect that I was able to pull right in. They plugged it, and I was on my way. And that was about the most perfect kind of flat I could ever get. But yeah, so maybe if you've had bad luck in yours, maybe it's just something about Mustangs. I don't know, the wide tires or something. Maybe it's interesting. But yeah, I'm glad you had the spare there for sure. And appreciate everyone agreeing there, or all the love. And let me see. So sorry, I lost my place again. So yeah, Lancewath, okay, yeah, saying it's his pleasure. And Two Track Jack says, good evening, everyone. Only spotted this weekend was a heavily customized early 2000 Celica. That's fun. So like an old school import, like custom. That's awesome. I miss every once there was, where did I see? I saw a couple of weeks ago, there was a Civic. It was like a last gen Civic hatch that had like the full like graphics on the side. They had like iBox springs super big across the doors, and all these sponsor stickers and stuff, and kind of remind me of all the Fast and Furious kind of days, and that was really fun to see. I don't know, it just like it ignited the Need for Speed Underground like fan in me to just like someday it'd be fun to have something like that, that's like old school. I'm sure that's like our generation, as we get older and everyone's got more time to tinker and stuff. I feel like that's going to be the new classic car thing. It's going to be like, wow, look, there's like a Civic with neon underglow and like the stickers. And yeah, it's I feel like that's going to be our generation's winga dinga here, in 10 or 15 years. We'll see. That's awesome. That's a nice spot. And let me see. Yeah, Lance Fox got the the wireless CarPlay reference there. And Linda says, good evening, everyone. Thanks for stopping by, Linda. And B. Mitch also said, even the new hardly Abscalums have wireless phone connectivity. Yeah, it's I think I'm trying to, yeah, there was, but I think the Honda was the first one. I think there maybe be a BMW motorcycle I heard that had CarPlay possibly as well. I don't know. Raphael said, I use Google for my 5-state trips and I love it. Car companies get on the ball. Yeah, that's great that you're able to use it on the bike. And yeah, it would make sense, especially with how recreational obviously motorcycles are, to have that guidance when you're going on road trips. And it's nice, especially with Google, because you can like plan various waypoints and do like a custom route and all that. So that's cool to have that for sure. And Mr. TPA Florida says, Matt, thoughts on the effect of sales of electric vehicles with federal rebates now being eliminated by the tax bill being signed? So I've read a few takes on this in the past week, and kind of, I mean, well, one thing I do want to say, because someone asked me about this in the last stream on Wednesday, and I was I guess either had outdated information whenever someone asked me when is it actually fading out. I had heard it was 180 days, but since then it's been, it's come out that it is September 30th. So public service announcement: if you want an EV and you are going to lease it, you're never going to get one cheaper, at least not for the next few years until batteries get way cheaper. You're not going to get one any cheaper than before September 30th. So the window is closing. And like I mentioned in prior live streams, we are actually going to get rid of the Mach-E early so we can take advantage of that tax credit one last time here before. We weren't supposed to get rid of the Mach-E until next year, but thankfully trade-in value has now matched our payoff amount because it depreciated so fast that we were kind of upside down in it. I didn't buy it. It's a Ford options plan, which is kind of like a lease. It's a long story, but Ford did this thing so you could get the tax credit. You had to buy it back in 2022 to get the tax credit, but it was set up like a lease so we could walk away. So next year we were supposed to walk away from it. Or buy it out if we wanted to. But now as a result, since thankfully it's at least a finance agreement still, we can just get out of it early. And we're gonna lease something here. And we did actually decide, I'm not gonna say what it is, I'm not gonna spoil it yet, but be on the lookout for a farewell video for our Mach-E here sometime in the next week or two. It's gonna be a little bit of a slower process. It'll happen before the end of this month, but not exactly sure on the exact timing just yet, but there will be a farewell video on the Mach-E, a wrap-up video on all of our thoughts here this month, and then we'll be introducing the new vehicle. I think Beth wants to kind of do the introduction because it is primarily her car, and she kind of did the video on the Mach-E when we revealed that, so it'll be Beth's return to the videos, at least for this one, and she'll be we'll both be talking through what we decided, why we decided what we decided. Again, I won't say anything more because I don't want to spoil it. But stay tuned for that here sometime here later this month. But as far as your question, Mr. TPA, so as far as how it's going to affect electric vehicle sales, obviously it's going to put a damper on them. I think what you'll see for the year overall is, it's going to be relatively the same. There could actually be some growth because I know a lot of people, I mean, myself included, whenever he got elected, I knew like, okay, the writing's on the wall here. We're working with borrowed time, and so that's why I ran out and got the Fiat for $130 a month. Because I'm like, I am never going to ever get a car this cheap ever again, especially with the tariffs and stuff. So I'm like, so I got my Fiat 500e there locked in for the next, 3 years here for $130 a month, locking in my cheap transportation before everything goes crazy. And, we've literally between that one and then now this one we're picking up, like we weren't planning on buying anything this year. And now we've bought 2 EVs. And that's not just us. There's a lot of people that I think it's actually encouraging, people that were on the fence that were like, I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for an EV, but I want one eventually, but they know that they're going to be paying more in the next couple of years. They're all running out and just doing it now. We're seeing this with car sales in general, just people were, rushing to panic buy before the tariff pricing kicked in and all that. So I think that's why you've seen like record sales here so far this year. But that's panic sales. It's not record sales because everyone's excited about the economy. Like clearly, it's just everyone's knowing that, we already see prices have gone up and will continue to, and it's going to just get worse before it gets any better. So, that's, I think, why you're going to see probably really good looking EV sales figures, especially this summer. Like there's people already calling this the summer of the EV because this is your last chance to get those deals. And so, I mean, it's really amazing how the market has flipped. Just a few months ago, Ford was like giving away Mach-E's, and now like, they have a lot of supply and stuff, but between the tariff stuff that's kind of complicated things, that restricted supply a little bit. And then, now we have people running out to buy them. They're going to become this hot commodity again, only until September 30th. And then from that point on, it's going to probably fall off a cliff, partially because everyone who's wanted one will then have one again. We kind of saw this again in 2021, 2022, whenever EVs were really hot. Back when we got our Mach-E, I was lucky to get it for sticker price. That was like an achievement because everyone was doing 10 grand over sticker. And that was the norm. And I mean, people were paying that. And I could have taken our Mach-E back in 2022 and turned around and flipped it and made 10 grand like that if I wanted to. And so that was the market just 3 years ago. And I think, now we're going to see, again, this another spike of everyone getting them. But like we saw in 2022, then it dropped off. And then everyone who wanted one had them, and then they're not going to be buying one every 2 years, so you're going to have that natural drop off. Same reason why iPhone sales spike around the holidays, because there's a new one comes out, everyone gets their phone, and then sales just plummet, and no one's buying an iPhone in January or February or March because there's nothing new. Everyone already got the new one. And you have the few people that trickle in that absolutely need a phone or whatever, but that's the normal cycle for tech, and EVs follow that absolutely, in my opinion. So I think you're going to see that same kind of thing here where spike, drop off, and you're going to see a bunch of headlines in the fall. Wow, EV sales have cratered because of Trump stuff. It's working. They're getting rid of EVs. All the stupid stuff. It's like, no, this is the natural, normal cycle that I'm calling it here in July. So I can point back to this video in 4 months whenever everyone's like, oh no, who could have ever seen this coming? That's going to be all the stupid clickbait titles and stuff. But it's just completely, absolutely normal. Now, long-term, in the next few years, certainly it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. And car companies have kind of already been preparing for this because the EV tax credit was never supposed to last forever. I think initially it was supposed to phase out by 2030, if I remember correctly. And so everyone knew that eventually these cars were going to have to stand on their own, with good pricing on their own. And I think this is why we're seeing this really strong push to get affordable EVs out that are affordable without a tax credit, and a good price even without that. And I think like the Equinox EV is kind of an example of that. Those I believe now actually start around 35 grand or so. But even at 40 grand, I mean, it's a lot of car, and it's a solid value even without the credit. And a lot of the EV sales are still very expensive. And for a lot of those, I mean, again, there's the leasing loophole, but for the past few years when people were buying them, if you were over 55 grand or whatever, it didn't qualify anyway. So those high-end EVs, I think, are especially going to be less affected. I mean, they did benefit from the leasing loophole, so they will still be hurt a little bit. But I think the other thing, so we're going to have a weird period where, in my opinion, sales for EVs drop off, but we're going to have a bunch of new product come onto the scene. All these new Toyotas, for example, next year. The Bolt is finally showing up. I think at some point this year it was supposed to arrive. And I actually just heard this week that I guess Ford, I think the plant that makes the Escape, Escape's going away. And when Escape drops off, I read the report that they're going to be changing over the factory for about 6 months to prepare for Ford's affordable EV, supposedly. That's the newest thing I've heard about that, because I hadn't heard stuff about that since last year, but it sounds like maybe Ford's affordable EV will actually finally show up at some point. If we are saying, I think Escape's running till the end of the year or something, and then 6 months. So maybe this time next year we see a debut of Ford's affordable EV or something. And also battery costs are dropping. They will continue to drop even with everything being disincentivized. It's still just a natural progression. And just because America, slows down doesn't mean the rest of the world's going to. And so even if we don't benefit from cheaper imported batteries, or we're not allowed to import anything because of tariffs or whatever, just the advancements in technology are still going to happen, and we'll be able to incorporate that in our own production stuff over here or whatever, and that will continue to improve that. And we are still going to see just battery prices fall, and the prices of these vehicles continue to naturally just get lower as this tech gets less fancy and more commonplace and cheaper to produce in mass amounts. So I think we're going to see, probably a dead spot in EV sales for a little bit. And then once we finally get this fresh blood coming in of, the new, cheaper things that are actually good, second, third generation kind of EVs that have, less bugs, more range, faster charging, all these kinds of things, next generation batteries. Then I think, it's still going to, progress. It's just not going to progress maybe as fast, but it's still happening. We're still going to transition to EVs as much as you either hate it or love it. It's still going to happen. And I think a lot of people too, once they experience the EV, like they don't want to go back. Like that's like So I will say we got another EV, obviously, because we did the tax credit. That's the whole motivation here. So, but like I brought up the idea to Beth, like, do you want maybe a plug-in hybrid instead or something? If we're trying to just, because we're trying to cut down on our payment and just be, more affordable vehicle than the Mach-E here. And so we floated all kinds of options, including non-EVs. And she's just like, I don't want to go back to a non-EV. She doesn't like the slow response of a gas engine, the slow response of a transmission, trying to figure out what gear it's supposed to be in, and pumping gas and taking it in for service and this, that, and the other. It's just, there's all these things that, I think a lot of people, if they even just drive one once, a lot of people, I think, get convinced pretty quickly. That was Tesla's whole tactic for years. That's why they had people in malls, being like, hey, like, let's go out into the mall parking lot and take it for a drive. I mean, that converted so many people, and it's brilliant because it's truly, I think, so I think you're getting a lot of those people too that are just not going to go back, no matter how much you disincentivize it, no matter how much you try and stop the growth. Like, it's just going to be the better commuter car for most people, because people don't want to be bothered with all that crap, and so, I mean, even like us, like PA actually made it worse to own an EV this year, because we now get slapped with a stupid $200 extra EV registration fee on top of the $50 odd we have to pay, which I know is still way less than other states in the country here. We don't pay property tax on cars, thankfully, so we definitely get off easy. But for something like a Fiat, I'm paying $130 a month for the Fiat, and now to register it every year, I got to pay $250, which I mean, it's like almost 2 car payments on the Fiat just in that registration. So I mean, PA screwed us, and I'm actually kind of salty about it. But even with that, like, I'm not getting rid of it. Like, I love it. It's great. Beth loves the EVs, and we're, so we're just going to deal with it. It hurts the savings equation a little bit because of the way they're trying to, discriminate against them. But, it's not going to stop. People are still going to transition to that. And so I think, sorry for the long answer, but that's my whole take on all that. So, and again, you'll see lots of people try and capitalize on this. And the second we see EV sales drop even, 0.25%, people are like, see, like, it's all going to fail. And it's like, no, it's not. I mean, maybe I'll be wrong. I don't know it all, but I am pretty confident the rest of the world is still going to keep on marching in that direction. And doesn't matter what America does. Most people in the rest of the world do not give a crap what we do. So anyway, but moving on here. Viewer is learning about the S650 stuff here. Now Lance Watt says Mav TV might have Rally on it. Okay, that's cool. I've never heard of Mav TV. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, I think it'd be fun to watch some rallying. And let me see. Darnell says Sport has a sharper throttle but more traction control. Interesting. So that's surprising, because actually, like, in the Cadillacs, whenever I would lap those, I mean, track mode was really aggressive with stability control, unless you went into the separate performance traction management, the PTM modes. Then you could loosen it up a little bit more and more, and it would give you more. But their system is so smart, because it knows if you know what you're doing or not. And the second you're not, like, applying throttle correctly out of a corner or something, it immediately cuts you back, because it knows, like, all right, you're doing this way too early. You're being stupid. We're not going to let you have it. And so it actually makes you a better driver if you are using it as a tool, and it's not just something that, is pissing you off. It's pretty cool, and really helps you improve your driving eventually. And Scott says, you're excited for the iNEX 6N? Absolutely. I am so pumped for that car. And we'll see if it's out before the end of the year. But if it is, there's a decent chance that it's I'd say probably one of my favorite new vehicles of the year that hopefully I'll get to drive at some point. But yeah, I'm very much excited for it. And let me see, Jay, thank you so much for being a member for 23 months now. I really appreciate it. And sorry I fell behind on the comments here. But he says, hey man, hope your family and you are doing all right and in great health. I pulled the trigger, and now I'm an owner of a 2012 World Rally Blue STI, and it is amazing. That's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And happy you're able to just go for it. And yeah, got to live in the moment, enjoy life. And so I'm really happy to hear that. I hope you enjoy it to the max, have a blast with it. And yeah, that's awesome. And thanks for stopping by, Jay. And YH, thank you so much for another super chat. He says EVs have no soul. I know it's a thing a lot of people say. It's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I personally think that a lot of EVs do have some fun characteristics and some soul to them, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like you can get, you can get attached, you can feel sentimental about anything, if you've created a bond with it, and doesn't matter if what the car is powered by. And even like our Mach-E, I now know, it's going away here soon. And, I'm even feeling a little nostalgic, like, wow, this is, my last month, driving around in the Mach-E, and it's been a good car. And, again, I'll save the whole wrap up for, a video, but, I've had a little bit of a bond with that car, even though, again, that's a car I hated whenever it came out. I hated the name. I still do hate the name. I never call it the Mustang Mach-E or ever refer to it as a Mustang whatsoever. Someone actually just the other day, I was at a party, and the one guy asked me, he's like, "Oh, I saw your Mustang. Is that your Mustang out there?" I'm like, "What? No, I don't have my Mustang anymore. I used to have a Mustang." And so he's like, "Oh, the white thing." I'm like, "Oh, the Mach-E." Like, I didn't even I was like not even understanding his question, because it's like that far divorced in my head as far as the Mustang thing. But to me, cars have soul. Like they always have soul, because a car is a memory builder. A car, you live your life in it. It's taken you places. You've experienced things in it, and you've had those memories. And to me, that's what gives a car soul. Like, sure, like, a car can have character with its sound, or it's this, that, or the other, but like, aside from the sound component, I think cars are more than just sound for soul. I think soul goes deeper than just the sound it makes or the way it delivers power. I think that the handling, and just the way that it reacts, the things that it does, the silly glitches maybe it has, or the funny behavior it does, or the one thing that drives you crazy, but everything else is great, or those types of things to me kind of give a car personality beyond just it's loud and it has turbo lag, or I think there's more to it, and maybe there's not as much soul if you have less stimuli coming in, but I think that it's still, to me, is still something that, again, I'm not in like obsessed with the Mach-E or anything, but like I'm gonna miss it, because it was a good car, it treated us well, and we had memories that we shared with it, and just the life we lived in it, and the family memories of this is the car we took to the beach when our daughter was 1.5 or 2 or whatever, those types of things. Like that all kind of builds into that connection and that bond and that soul to me. I think you can find soul in anything. There's lots of inanimate objects. I think that you can, kind of joke around about them having a soul, and I think that's so. But anyway, not to contradict you there, but I know that's a common complaint, and for a lot of people, totally valid. Everyone likes something different, and that's totally okay. And let me see. Michelle says, "Call me crazy. I feel like Tesla is the one that gets a pass for not having CarPlay, as their software is pretty good in my opinion, but still they and other brands should have the option for CarPlay." Yeah, and actually I was just talking to Beth about this the other day. Like I still laugh, because there's like someone just bought a brand new Model Y, and I saw them driving by, and they still got a phone mount on the windshield like it's a 15-year-old car. And it's like, I mean, again, I think for a lot of people, it's not a big deal. I just talked to a neighbor the other day who is shopping for an EV, and they really like the Blazer EV. And I'm like, I love Blazer EV. It's fantastic. It is really well done. I'm like, I just wish it had CarPlay. That's my biggest complaint. But they're coming out of cars that don't have CarPlay. They have like, cars that are, 10, 15 years old. And they're like, well, I've never had, so I'm not going to really miss it. They're like, we had it in a rental car once and it was nice, but like, that's not a deciding factor for them. And that's completely okay. And I think there's a lot of people like that, if they're in that typical cycle of upgrading every 10 years or so, there's a window there where they never experienced CarPlay, and it didn't become like a required feature. It's, but I think for a lot of people, it's like once you try a heated steering wheel, you never want to go back. Or if you're in a place that's really hot, the first time you finally get a car with ventilated seats, you never want to go back. And there's those types of things. And I think, a lot of people have been hooked on CarPlay. But a lot of these people that either maybe the Tesla was their first EV, and again, they've never experienced anything else, so they're fine tapping away on their windshield with their little phone mount, and doing it the old school way. And I mean the software is good in the Tesla. It's just that you can't text on your screen. You can't, you can't use Siri aside from the eyes free Siri thing, which isn't as good. There's workarounds for stuff, but it's again one of those things. If you experience it, you probably never want to go back. But if you have never experienced it, then you're fine. Like that's why, like with my neighbor, I'm like, if you love the Blazer and again never experienced CarPlay and it's something you don't need to try, or you don't want to try and make that a priority, I'm like, absolutely, Blazer is probably a great fit for you, and I'm happy for you. That's something that's not a requirement. So it all comes down to people's experiences, and there's no shortage of people. Every time I complain about it, that people come out of the woodwork in the GM videos that I that I always film is like, you don't need CarPlay, it's fine, blah blah blah. And I think I pretty clearly demonstrated the deficiencies, especially if you're in the Apple ecosystem. It's just not as good. I hope someday the software in all these cars gets good enough that there's no need for any of that kind of stuff, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So YH says only downside is only track mode does those blip downshifts. Interesting. If I use the paddles, it's jerky and laggy. That's surprising that it doesn't. Yeah, that's strange. Usually in manual mode, the car is supposed to always be pretty smooth. I have to remember, because I did the 10-speed auto in the S550, and it wasn't the best with the transmission. I complained about it plenty in my videos of that, but I never felt that it was jerky. It was just slow. Typically was the only complaint I had with the automatics and the Mustangs. That's interesting. And B Mitchell says about the Mustang there with the GT and even my former C4 track mode shuts all the nanny stuff off. In sport mode, even Art and Senna can't beat the computer. It's the computers have really been helpful, I think, in my experience, at least. And Theodore says, hey, man, I was at the local Walmart and we saw a guy crash a Nissan Z. Before I said anything, my wife said he should have watched your video. Yeah, the Z is it's a tricky car with those. You're right, with the trash control. I forgot about that, but yeah, in my Z review, it's twitchy for sure. Even 370 was twitchy, and then you add in the twin turbo thing. Yeah, Z can be a handful. People love it for that, but yeah, especially that's a very easy car to turn off stability control in, and then you're on your own, and it's a short wheelbase, and it can get the better of you pretty quick. And yeah, especially in the Nismo version. That one, that car, yeah, as you saw it like tried to kill me. That was the most. There must have still been something wrong with the tires on the one that I had. That Nismo was just all over the place, not in a good way. That's the closest a car has come to trying to screw me over. Most cars, I can sense the limits pretty easily, and even cars that are a handful. I've again lapped CT5V Blackwings on track at 150 miles an hour and all this stuff. No problem. And then I get into a little 400 horsepower, or I guess, was it 420 in the Nismo or whatever? And that thing's like trying to, oversteer off a cliff. It's the last thing it wants, it's going to do. And it's just funny. But sorry that you saw a crash. That's always a little upsetting, I think, most of the time. So that's crazy. Glad hopefully everyone was okay. And Stratus Edge says, hey, Matt, my dad picked up a used 25 Ram Rebel yesterday after trading in his 15 F-150 after 10 years. Though it doesn't have the Hemi, the standard output Hurricane packs a punch. Yeah, Hurricane's great. That Hurricane motor, it never got the appreciation it deserved. It's still early days for that motor. Hopefully, in time, people will see how good it is. But it really is phenomenal. And I think I just said this a week or two ago about how the Hurricane, we're talking inline 6 turbo, that's same thing as 2JZ, same thing as all these legendary BMW motors. That is a good setup, and it's fairly hard to screw up in my opinion as well. And the Hurricane motor is just it's so good. I mean, yeah, even when Tim Kuniskis announced the return of the V8, he's like the Hurricane's the punchier, faster Ram, but people want the sound of the V8 and they don't care how slow it is, and so that's they're offering it. But Hurricane's absolutely the better motor by a long shot, especially for a truck where you want that low end torque of the turbos and better for towing. I mean, just it made sense. And that's the thing that sucks about Ram and Dodge getting hammered so badly is the logic completely checks out in my opinion. Like Hurricane is the better truck motor. EV is the better way to do a drag car for Charger EV. Like, if we're talking about, again, beating or doing the tool, having the right tool for the job and doing the job the best, like EV is the best way to do a drag race. It's super consistent. It's all-wheel drive. Obviously, it might not be the most fun, but if you are trying to chase fast times, that is going to be the consistent, easy way to do that. Same thing with a Hurricane motor. If you want to have, a better towing experience, you want to have, the better torque for whatever around town, like, it is the better engine. So it's so upsetting because I think that, Dodge was really on the right track and Ram was on the right track and doing the right things. And I mean, Ford switched to EcoBoost, 10 years ago. I mean, they kept the V8 around, but huge majority of every F-150 out there is running an EcoBoost motor. And I guess there was gnashing of teeth, whenever those were first coming out, in the early 2010s. But like, everyone else has, made this transition and it wasn't a big deal. And then, Ram tries to do it and then they, get socked in the eye and then they run home licking their wounds and, going right back to, the same thing they've been doing forever. And, we'll see how it plays out for them. But I think it's crappy the way that everything has gone down with Dodge and Ram. And, hopefully, they at least cash in on the next few years of the free for all, and then I'm just hoping that they have an okay future, once the party ends, as far as the free for all. Anyway, so B Mitchell, I'm happy your dad actually got one too, and I'm glad he's enjoying it. At least one person's enjoying the Hurricane motor out there. And B Mitchell says, my former 2004 C5, you can't outdrive the predecessors in the car. Yeah, I actually I saw a C6 Grand Sport today, convertible too. That was a nice spot driving around here. And I always liked the little like gills you got on the Grand Sports on the C6. I thought that was a cool touch. And let me see. Darnell says, I have that goo inflator pack in my S550. Thankfully, I haven't had to open it up. Yeah, that's all the Bullet had too. And I thankfully never had to use it either. And B Mitchell says, at least this most recent flat was just before the exit for my house. So just rolling it off the freeway killed the sidewall. But at least it didn't bend a wheel like the previous time. Man, yeah, that's always the big worry, right? Especially with low profile tires. You have no forgiveness there. It's just like, got to stop as fast as you can. And Vishal says, with this talk of tire punctures, cars having big wheels and low profile tires seem to be a factor. How big will wheels keep getting before it becomes too excessive? I know. I'm right there with you. I am not in the big wheel camp. I mean, some companies do a pretty decent job of retaining ride quality, but it's just, yeah. I mean, I kind of get, some of the rationale for it, because these cars are getting so big that some cars just do look silly with 18-inch wheels on them. Because, I mean, then you got to really have big sidewalls, or it's just like you got this tiny little, toy wheel in this giant vehicle. So there's some cases where I think, you need a fairly big wheel to fill it out and, make it look okay. But yeah, I think now it's just kind of overboard. You'll see in my Navigator review, which finally will be going live tomorrow. It's been delayed a couple of times. It's just one of those ones that's very hard to edit because it's just like a ton of stuff to talk about. But that car's on 20, or the Navigator's on 24-inch wheels. And that is just like you'll see in my video, I'm like, just get the 22s. They come standard and are free. 22s are still completely fine. It still looks good, and you have a little bit more sidewall there. The 24 is just to say you have the biggest wheels on the block or whatever. It's it's kind of silly. But totally agree with you there, Vishal. It is already excessive, I think. And Darnell says, typically your punctures are on the tread of the tire, so a thinner sidewall is not super relevant. Yeah, except, again, it's just that less forgiveness, and also it doesn't give you as much padding when you're parallel parking. A lot of people, get sloppy with their parallel parking, and that you really can mess up rims a lot worse than you could whenever you had a flexible tire that was able to kind of bend and flex a little bit. Now with these super low profile tires, even if you manage to spare the wheel, you can slice the sidewall, these really skinny sidewalls, really easily on a curb, and that can kind of get you in trouble a little bit. So it's still a concern, but yeah, I mean, as far as you're right about, most punctures do happen on the actual tire, and so that wouldn't be as big of a difference. And Raphael says, my sighting was a Mach 1 at the gas station. I had to walk up and tell him I love that car. That's awesome. Yeah, I love the Mach 1s too. And Lex says the Honda Goldwing has Android Auto as well. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that they have both. And YH says, yeah, you have a Mach-E. Yes, we do. We have a Mach-E we got back in 2022. It's the family car that Beth drives. And yeah, it's been a good car here for 3 years, so we've had it now. Mystical Gamer says, hey, what's up, Matt? Also, while I was out with a friend of mine yesterday, I saw multiple Palisades and a few cool looking cars as well. But as far as the Palisades, they're selling like hotcakes. Yeah, I think they're still doing over 100,000 units a year. It's definitely been, a huge hit for Hyundai, and they're very happy with it. And XGL Server says, Matt, thoughts on covering news of the week during these live streams, especially the discussion-worthy topics? I'm always down for chatting. I still do stay up to date on most of the car news. I don't follow it quite as closely as I did when I was doing the updates, but I do still kind of get updates throughout the week on, car news and stuff. So always happy. I just kind of leave these discussions for you guys to kind of direct, and we just kind of follow where the questions go. So if there's stuff you'd like to hear my thoughts on, by all means, feel free to bring it up, and more than happy to chat. But I one time tried to do like a live weekly update where I just kind of read off the news there live, but I like the interaction here. And so that's why doing a live where I'm just, reading all the, most interesting articles of the week, just to me, I could, I guess live is a little more engaging still because it's something you're actually watching, without any edits. But, if I wanted to do like a quick rough and dirty weekly update, I could just, set a camera in front of myself like this and just, read the articles and not have any, pictures or B-roll or anything like that. But yeah, I'm always happy to discuss if there's anything you ever want to bring up. And we do kind of talk about that sometimes in these updates. So, but yeah, definitely if anyone wants to talk about anything particular, let me know. And JS says, good evening to you and family. I was disappointed with the Toyota discontinuing the naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine in the RAV4. I was waiting for the new redesign. Mazda CX-5 2026 redesign is looking good. Yeah, I mean, you still get a naturally aspirated engine in the hybrid though. So, I think that's great too, because it's, still gonna be just as bulletproof as the hybrid, in my opinion. I mean, there's people with the last gen RAV4 hybrid. There's one guy actually around here that's a medical courier, and he put like, I think over 450,000 miles on his. His was like a 2020 or 2021, 450,000 miles on it in just a few years. And then it got taken out by a deer strike, and that was the end of it. So he could have even kept going beyond that, I think. So yeah, but they're, I think it's a very reliable thing. You don't have to worry about the hybrid component. And I think the new RAV4 is, going to hold up really well still. But CX-5, should be good. That's coming out here in just a few days, and I will have a video just going over all the details of it, and the pictures that Mazda is sending out here. But haven't seen it in person yet or anything. So I'm under embargo for that. But yeah, it's something we'll be covering here this week. And Michelle says the EV credit is what led my friend's parents to get rid of their 2021 Model Y for a newer Juniper Y to take advantage of the rebate. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad I'm not the only one, but yeah, it seems like it's a lot of people kind of doing the same thing right now. And Caleb said, let the market decide EV growth, not government subsidies. I know that's kind of the thinking there is, that's why a lot of people are in favor of getting rid of it. But if I won't get into this whole thing because it can turn into a whole big debate, but we subsidize gas. So if we want to get rid of subsidies and have a truly fair level playing field, get rid of all subsidies. We subsidize the oil industry like crazy, like tons of money. So, that kind of argument kind of falls apart if you actually look at where the government subsidizes stuff. they subsidize the hell out of gas stuff. So it's not fair. Just to, say, oh, it's fine for gas, but it's not fine for EVs. If we're going to be fair, then let's be fair and have no subsidies whatsoever. The oil industry does not need them. And so, yeah. So if we're going to say no subsidies, then let's do no subsidies. But that's not how this bill is constructed. This bill is getting rid of the EV ones, getting rid of all the clean energy ones, that gave us a ton of jobs in red states, by the way. All these battery plants, this meta plant in Georgia, all this stuff is in red states that may go away, if there's less incentive, and a lot of these projects that were planned, there was this big investment, I think, in Arkansas that's probably going to, evaporate because, you don't have the incentives for it. It's just, there's going to be all these types of things that are, again, we'll see what happens. But I think a lot of stuff's going to bite them in the butt. But, the bill still subsidizes gas, and our taxpayers and our tax dollars are subsidizing gas. But, so that, to me, that argument just doesn't hold up. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't. Linda says, sister sold her garage kept low mileage Prius to granddaughter and bought a new Prius before the tariff took place. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad to hear the anecdotal stories that, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, everyone can figure it out. Like, this is going to suck. Let's get a car that can last us for at least the next 4 years. And I think it's very smart of everyone to capitalize. And I've been recommending that ever since April. And Vishal says, the first time I drove a Tesla, I was blown away by it. Have wanted one ever since, but an EV isn't practical for my needs at this time, so I didn't get one. Yeah, and that completely makes sense. I mean, I just told someone the other day too. I'm like, if you live in an apartment, do not buy an EV. I mean, for a few people, it can work. But really, if you can't charge at home, EVs are just going to be a not good experience right now. So it's not for everyone. And I never have pretended it is. It's always something. That's why I love Toyota. Have the hybrid for people who can't plug in at all. Have the plug-in hybrid for people who can plug in but aren't ready for a full EV. And then have good EVs. And thankfully, they're finally now going to have the good EVs as well. And you have, something that fits everybody. And I think that's the way to do it. And, like I just wrote in that Carbuzz article a few weeks ago, just them forcing RAV4 to be all hybrid for this new generation, that saves so much in gas and so many emissions. Just doing that, and that's a huge help still, so it doesn't have to be all EVs. And I think that was what I liked about the previous emissions targets, was that it was like, we just need to improve the efficiency, and EVs will certainly help get there. But there was no mandate, there was no requirement. It was get to this MPG however you want, and Toyota was planning on doing it with a bunch of great hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EVs, and they still are. That's still the way they're going to go, and that's the way the rest of Europe and everyone else is going to have to go, because they still have some kind of regulations and fines for not hitting the efficiency targets and stuff. So it's still going to happen. We can't be isolationist. Car companies can't afford to make American specials for everything. Certainly there can be some things like that. But, you can't have every single product have a gas guzzler motor for America and then have efficiency stuff for everyone else. It's just, especially considering they know this is going to flip, in a couple of years anyway. So it's just like, you can't bend to the whims of every 4 years, whichever way the wind blows. So, that's why I don't think there's going to be a giant change in the trajectory. Again, you'll have companies like Ram capitalizing and building some more Hemis for the next, 4 years and cashing in. But I don't think we're going to see an actual change in direction overall. Because it's too big of a ship. You can't turn the ship around in 4 years. It just, and you can't turn it around in less than that to even capitalize before the party stops, So, yeah, it's not happening the way people might be thinking it will. And Darnell says EVs, yeah, great for around town and smaller trips. Keep a motorcycle or a sports car with a gas engine if you need some soul on the weekends. Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. I mean, there's a lot of enthusiasts. I know, again, there's a lot of people that say, oh, if you like EVs, you're not an enthusiast or a real enthusiast. I've heard that a bunch of times. But, a lot of people's like, look, like I'm saving a ton of money so I can buy more parts for my sports car for the weekend, or for whatever else you want to spend your money on. But it's like, why throw money away if it fits you and fits your lifestyle, and you are able to charge at work or at home, especially if you can charge at work, then you're getting someone else to pay for your charging, even though it's so cheap at home. But if you're getting like actually free, fuel for your vehicle, like you are definitely definitely winning there, you know. But yeah, and Nicholas says, "Hi Matt and everyone. Saw my first Mustang Bullet on the road. Great looking car. That's awesome. Yeah, that's crazy. I'm curious if that's the first one you've ever seen, or if it's just the first the new gen, or what. But yeah, Bullets are great, and they are fairly rare. So that's awesome. Cool spot. And Tim says it's not discrimination. Cars use roads. Gasoline tax pays for maintaining roads. EVs weigh more than internal combustion engine cars, but still use the same roads and don't use fuel. It's still cheaper, just a solid offset. So on the surface, that's the way that it's been pitched. But if you truly want to do, if you truly want to do a fair, tax to make up for what you're losing with the gas tax, that was PA's rationale. Then you should do it based on mileage, not based on a flat rate. Any flat rate tax is never fair because everyone is different. And so my Fiat 500e that's sitting in the garage, since I got it at the end of February, it has 700 miles on it, and like 200 of those were driving at home. So I've put 500 miles on it in like the past 5 months. So 100 miles a month. And if you do the calculation of, okay, $200 in, gas tax that I'm paying, because I'm not paying it for gas. If you calculate it out, like the amount of money that I'm paying would be the equivalent of me driving 15,000 miles a year in a car that gets 30 miles per gallon. I'm not even going to do 5,000 miles in that Fiat this year. And also it's small, it's light, even though it's got a battery in it, it's only 3,000 pounds or 3,200 pounds or something. So in my case, no, it's not fair because I'm paying the equivalent of 15,000 miles of driving, and I'm doing far, far less. I might not even hit 1,000 miles by the end of this year. We'll see. And even with Beth, the Mach-E, she drives maybe 7,000 or 8,000 miles a year, and she is paying like as if she's driving 15,000 miles a year because of this tax. If they wanted to be fair, do it based on mileage. It's that simple. It's not hard. Every time I register the car with PA every year, you have to put in an odometer reading. They could say, okay, here's your odometer reading. Here's your difference from last year. You pay, 10 cents every 10 miles or whatever the case is. I don't know what the math would have to be, but, and do it fairly. And I mean, PA has one of the highest gas taxes in the country. So absolutely, it's going to charge me, a certain amount of money for that. Totally fine. I'm okay with that. I agree. If I'm using the roads, I should be paying to use the roads as well. And, paying for that upkeep. I'm not opposed to paying some. I just want it to be fair, and it's not fair. So that's why it is, when you do a blanket tax, it is discrimination against somebody. For some people, maybe they make out. If you're driving 50,000 miles a year in your EV, sure, you're still making out big time. You're still taking advantage of the system or whatever. But I'm just getting screwed and paying more than I ever would have paid for gas. So for me, like with a Fiat, I would be better off finding a cheap gas car, and even with oil change for $50 and, maybe paying $50 a year in gas tax or something, probably not even that, I would come out ahead. So it's actually disincentivizing the cheap EVs, especially, and people who don't drive a lot, which is the whole perk of EVs is, it's great because it sits around a lot. That's better for an EV than a car that, has oily bits. There's all these types of things that it's, so yes, this is another thing where on the surface sounds like it's fair, sounds like a good idea, and then you dig into it and it's actually not. So that's why I'm salty at PA for that. And also, I mean, the final thing I'll say, why don't we have Jeff Bezos actually pay his taxes for all these Amazon trucks that are wrecking the roads relentlessly, and then these people are getting off paying nothing essentially, or far less than they should. We should be taxing the hell out of those trucks. I mean, all the abuse of 24/7 deliveries, delivering stuff in 12 hours or less and all this crap. Like, I mean, that is what's damaging the roads. That's what's screwing stuff up. The emergence of Amazon, as convenient as it is, imagine, if we didn't have all these Amazon trucks on the road, how much better the roads would be. It's just like, that is, Amazon should single-handedly be taking care of the roads. They can afford to do it. But like, so this is why, again, things are not fair. And it just, to me, you run the math and it falls apart. So it's not great in my opinion. Sorry for the rants tonight. I'm sure very unpopular opinions here coming out of my mouth. But Linda says, I was really excited when the Mach-E was produced, but decided to stay with my EcoBoost. Yeah, and I'm glad you love the EcoBoost. And it's a totally different car. I don't think, anyone who's a Mustang fan, aside from having the pony on it, there's no Mustang to it. It doesn't drive like a Mustang. It doesn't feel like a Mustang. So it's not a good substitute or anything like that. So absolutely, if you love your EcoBoost, do not get rid of it for a Mach-E. EcoBoost is a lot more fun and more character for sure. Again, having an engine, having all that is a lot of fun. And Darnell says, if we want to tax vehicles fairly, there should be mileage times the rate. Yeah, so Darnell's already ahead of me there. Yep, glad someone agrees with me here. Thanks, Darnell. And see, Edge says the Mach-E gets a pass there. And JS says, Jay from New York, what do you think of the 2026 Mazda CX-5 redesign? Also, is the CX-5 still made in Japan? I'm not at liberty to talk about CX-5 because I have all the info and I've seen everything and I'm under embargo. So I will talk about that in my reveal of the car whenever that happens here this week. So stay tuned for all of my thoughts, and we can talk about this for sure. I think, if not, I can't remember. I think it would be, is it Wednesday or Thursday? Anyway, talk about either in Wednesday's live stream or we're here next Sunday, and we can chat all about it there. And I'll have all my thoughts in the video here this week. Let me see. Jay says, having a car having a soul. Car says, ka-chow. Owner gets scared. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny with the cars thing too. I don't know if you guys saw that lawsuit. I think it was a year or two ago. I think Pixar was like trying to sue the guy who had a BRZ that was done up like Lightning McQueen. It was the biggest load of BS and a waste of time for Pixar. But they wanted to really just like completely persecute the dude for no reason. And Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says voice commands, voice recorded for company data. I don't know. I think that is most. So if you're talking older voice commands, that is in car, because voice commands were around before there was connected car stuff. So not necessarily. It depends on the car and how new it is. Now, newest cars that are all cloud connected and all that kind of stuff, possibly you have to look into the user policies for those systems. I'm not sure if it's like an Apple thing where it's all on machine and doesn't leave, or if it is something where I would assume that they're not, able, maybe they get like data as far as like your, what you're doing, but as far as like, your actual, I don't think they can actually access your recordings, because that would probably be an invasion of privacy. Maybe they do. I don't know. I haven't looked into that, honestly. It's a very good question. I wish I had a better answer for you, Jordan. I'm not sure. Because I believe, and it comes down to states like PA, for example. It's not legal to record someone audio wise unless you tell them. And I'm not sure if a car's voice commands, if that's effective enough with communicating that it is recording you. It obviously is listening, and I guess that means recording by extension, but I'm not, because there's some laws where like you're not allowed to record at all. There's all these different things. So I think they would probably, just to be easy from a 50-state standpoint, probably not be doing any unauthorized recording there. It's probably just data as far as, how many times is this person accessing their phone book, or how many times, just kind of more general, vague data on how people are using this. Do people actually follow through with the voice command, or does the thing get confused? Just for assurance purposes, for quality and stuff, they probably want to make sure that the voice command is working well. But even that, I don't know how much they even look into that, because if they did, I think a lot of these companies would be doing better, because a lot of these voice command systems still don't work very well, even in some of the most fancy new stuff here these days. That's a good question. Maybe someone else has a better answer than I do. Wish I had a better one for you, Jordan, but great question. Thanks again for the super chat as well. And let me see here. So where were we here? Decepticon says, yo, Matt Moran back in the house. Thanks for stopping by, Decepticon. And Jay says, there's so much character with this 2012 STI, so much more than my 2022 ILX A spec. So mechanical and such a raw driving experience you don't really get nowadays. And I guess such a nostalgic experience. I'm glad that you enjoy that. And yeah, I mean, but that's a good comparison that, you know, even another gas-powered car still might have less soul and less of that character, and you know, so it's always kind of this varying scale of stuff, and you know, and it's also just comes down to, you know, people's preferences too. But yeah, I mean, that is a car for sure. I mean, the STIs are so, you're right, just so visceral, and yeah, just so much fun. And you see, Dave says, have you seen the new manufacturer EV sales quota system for Canada? Starting at 20% in 2026, rising to 100 by 2035. For every vehicle short of that, the manufacturer has to pay 20 grand to the government. Interesting. I haven't followed Canada's progress there on that and how that's all played out. I'm curious, you know, they just had a new election here this past year as well. So I'm curious if anything has changed or if everything's still kind of going in the same direction there as far as their policies. But yeah, so I mean, and there's certainly penalties as far as, yeah, I mean, like that's the thing that was different about America is like we just didn't have an EV quota. There was never a specific amount of EVs. There was just, you know, really high MPG that would obviously be offset by EVs, and most companies obviously were planning on doing, you know, some kind of EVs to help boost that number. But yeah, but that's interesting. Canada's actually going for a quota for EVs, because that, to me, that is a little more assertive, and yeah, again, we'll see how it plays out for them. But that's another, you know, Canada's so close. And I mean, even if, again, America tries to be more isolationist here for the next 4 years, you know, if, you know, Canada's doing, you know, one thing, I mean, Mexico, I don't know, you know, how, you know, they're going to advance or not, but, you know, with Canada, like, it's a large market. And so this is why, you know, especially, you know, these car companies are shipping cars oftentimes, you know, from overseas, and you're putting Canadian and American cars possibly on the same boats, or you're having, you know, at least at port, you know, you're kind of shipping them over in batches and things like that, you know, before they go to individual ports and stuff. But I mean, like, it's why it's hard to really completely segment the markets, you know, so drastically and try and just appeal to only one policy or only one country, because it's just, you know, we're all intertwined, and there's all this, you know, it's a global market. It always really has been for a long time. But yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on Canada. Then I hadn't heard that. So thanks, Dave, for the heads up, and I'm gonna see how that goes for them. And obviously different culture and people, but I know a lot of people also, you know, are dissatisfied with that, I'm sure, in Canada as well. So we'll see how that plays out for them. But Chad says, have you ever done a comparison with a car's MPG with start stop versus the same car with it turned on? It seems like it doesn't help at all. So there's actually a couple of cars. I think Subaru does this, and I think Toyota did this in their older cars. I don't know if they do it anymore, but they would have a counter. I think Subaru is really the main one that does this now. They have a counter. So whenever you are stopped, it starts like a little timer of how much time you've spent with the engine off, with the start stop system enabled, and how much fuel you have saved. And it actually tells you how much you've saved. And it's small. I mean, like, you know, over the course of a week, I can't remember, it was like 0.1 gallon or something. Like, it's not a lot. I think the logic there is, you know, over time, you know, if we're talking years and years and thousands of miles of driving, that's where, you know, it can add up. And I think, you know, and this is kind of why I think hybrids, I think, you know, aside from maybe, you know, sports cars or enthusiast vehicles, like, anything that's just a commuter kind of vehicle should be hybrid, because it's kind of stupid to have your engine running when you don't need it. It really, I mean, again, unless you're doing it for the fun of it, and again, for sports cars, for whatever, that's a different kind of thing. But if you're someone who has a, you know, crappy engine sound anyway, or you just don't care, why have it on when you're going down a hill? Why? I mean, you can do engine braking and stuff, but, like, you know, as far as, like, why have it, you know, sitting in traffic idling needlessly? Like, idling is the stupidest thing ever. Like, hybrid is clearly the better way to do that. And so I think it's just that same kind of mentality of, like, even if we're not saving a ton, we're saving something. and it's just silly to have this engine on. So I think that's kind of why they're doing it. And there is still a savings there, and I think also whenever you are dealing with places that struggle with smog, especially places like LA, having all these cars not idling can really benefit the air quality too, especially when you're talking about rush hour and stuff like that. And so it's really good to have. So I think that's part of it. But no, I mean, it's not going to change the world because you have a start-stop system. It's not going to, change the tide of climate change. But it is, it's helpful, I think, personally. Some cars, it's certainly a nuisance. Some companies do it better than others. And I think the ones where it's a nuisance, a lot of people, myself included, will just turn it off if it's too slow to respond whenever you need it to. That sucks. Totally get it. I turn them off too half the time. But, whenever it's well done, which is possible, and if companies actually bother to do that well, then it's great. And there's a lot of cars I do leave it on because it's completely unobtrusive, and there's no reason to have the engine on. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing. But I think, is that something else? I thought I saw somewhere that like someone's trying to get rid of start stopping, and it's like, it's so funny that like people that like don't want things to be regulated are still really adamant about like, oh, we got to tell people not to have start and all this other stuff. Is just do as I say, not do as I do. Anyway, so where were we here? I'm fired up here tonight, I guess. So YH says he tested it in a Renault C300 and averaged the same MPG. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's a long time before you really get any kind of savings. Lancelot says, I don't remember you having as much trouble in the manual Hellcat Challengers as you did in Nismo Z. You're right. I didn't. Yeah, Hellcat Challenger is more predictable to drive than the Nismo Z that I had. Again, I need to review another one, even though it may try and kill me again. I just need to like see for myself because everyone else says Nismo handles so well and is amazing and all this, and it just wasn't for me. And that's why that video, I hope that video is one of those real markers for my channel as far as like, I'm going to say whatever my honest, blunt opinion is about a car. I don't care if it doesn't line up with what everyone else is saying. I don't care if it's going to piss off the car company. I don't care. Like, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to say how it feels to me in that moment. And that was, I think I need to do another, like a short little YouTube short on that, because people are like seeing the Polestar one of me complaining. If you saw that a week or so ago, me complaining about the key fob, me complaining about, the lack of window switches there. People are like, wow, I love seeing you be critical. And it's like, I've been critical for a long time. If you watched more stuff, but a lot of people just don't catch this stuff. And it's, so I think that's why I need to highlight the negative moments that I do have, because they are quite frequent, as you see here tonight. But that's something that I think hopefully that video really stood out to people. Like, wow, like this dude is going to be honest for better or for worse. Because that Z Nismo is not good in my opinion. All right, let me see. Confirmation says, hi, Matt. Good to see you. If I was running Dodge, I would have called the Hurricane engine the 6-pack. Perhaps it would have been received better with that name returning. Yeah, that would have been good. And I think they're calling it that in the Charger, if I remember correctly. I think that's what they're calling the straight 6 version of the Charger. Whenever that was supposed to come this summer too, and I don't know what's happening with that. Maybe they're just gonna ditch that and try and shove a V8 in there with a giant blower and just give up on any kind of progress. We'll see. But Alexander says 28's on the next version of the Escalade. Probably, the way we're going, it wouldn't surprise me. It's so funny. Midnight Club Dub Edition was a visionary as far as the and dub, and that whole scene, honestly, like they called it 20 years ago, probably even more. Giant wheels on luxury SUVs. It was the way of the future, and they called it all way back when. Those rappers, everyone was trying to ball in their SUVs. That they were ahead of the times. They truly were, and I hope every single one of them says, "Man, I was running 24s, 28s, 20 years ago," and now these car companies are finally figuring out that it's kind of cool, and a lot of people really want it. Even again, if it hurts ride quality, like it did that back then, but again, people like having the bling. And the Trend Car Guy says, I can relate to the too small a wheel for the car problem. Magnum came stock with 17s with a 215/65 tire when the car was designed with 20s in mind. Yeah, and there's certain examples of that, and especially, sometimes they go a little too small and they really make it a penalty box as far as being like, oh man, like this car looks, less impressive than it should because you went for the cheap trim and you didn't go for the fully loaded one or whatever. That was a thing for a while, but I feel like these days with standard equipment being so good, there's still a few cars where it looks cheap, on the base wheels, but I think overall, most stuff still looks really nice on the, lower wheels. And even the car that we're getting to replace the Mach-E, I specifically was like, we don't need the big wheels. So we're going for the smaller wheeled trim. And I think it's going to ride better as a result and just be, easier with cheaper tire replacements. I mean, there's a whole bunch of perks to it for sure. And Jay says, okay, we're talking between Jay and Etch about the Mustang and the WRX there. Let me see here. So Tim says, okay, talking about Darnell there. As far as not getting people to check in and log their mileage on a yearly basis. I mean, yeah, PA requires you to. Maybe other states are different. I don't know where you're at, Tim, but PA, absolutely. If you want to register your car, you have to tell them every year what your mileage is. I thought that was pretty standard for vehicle registration to say mileage. Maybe not. Yeah, because I've only ever lived in Virginia and I didn't register a car there. So, yeah, maybe that's just a weird PA thing that I don't know. But yeah, PA absolutely could do it because again, we always report that. That's just standard operations here. And Vishal says we hit 3,000 miles in our 2025 TX350 today. We're happy with it. Space and comfort is fantastic. The 2.4 turbo engine has been pretty good power for its size too. We are part of the crowd that bought the TX before the tariffs hit, so we can relate to that. Nice. I'm glad the TX is doing well for you guys. They are so popular around here. I see a TX just about every day now. And it makes complete sense. It's, the vehicle that Lexus has been begging for from, their dealer has been begging for it for years and years. And now it's here and it's really well done. And, I'm glad that everyone was able to snatch them up here. And E85 says, hey, Matt, any talk of the Slate? Haven't chatted about it yet tonight. That's going to be a car. Someone mentioned in one of the last live streams that like maybe Slate's not going to happen anymore. I feel like it's still going to be a thing of relative cheapness, even if it doesn't have the tax credits. It still is going to hopefully undercut Maverick and just be an electric Maverick before Ford's bothered to get around to doing it. And so, I still think that Slate has a promising future. Sure, it would have been nice if it was 25 grand with a tax credit. And, keep in mind, I don't know did they say when the Slates are coming out? I don't recall if it's supposed to be like end of 2026 or something. But, there's also hope that, Slate obviously is going to take some time to roll out and, make it to production, all that kind of stuff. And, we only have to wait till 2029, hopefully, for a lot of this stuff to get reversed. And we may have another tax credit. Maybe that'll never come back. We'll have to see. But, hopefully there'll be some kind of at least fair treatment for EVs in 2029 that maybe makes the Slate, a little bit of a sweeter deal than it might be for the next couple of years. But I think Slate is also, they've tapped into something that's beyond just a value play. I don't think it's just for people who want a cheap car. I think it's truly like this real, highly customizable, almost kit car kind of thing with the Slate that you don't have access to. I think to me, it kind of feels like another Tesla moment or another kind of, because it's like they've really rethought, how to go about doing a car and, saying, okay, it's a truck, but you want to make it an SUV, you put this cab on the back that we sell you, you put this back seat in, and you put in the seat belts and the airbags and you're set. And like, no one's ever had the guts to do that. And you've had stuff like this, the Subaru Brat back in the day that, avoided the chicken tax by, bolting some little like school chairs to the bed of the Brat, so there was a couple, but like, as far as modern vehicles that just, and to be so bare bones and so basic, I think it's a really good read on where society is at these days with cars and with just the tolerance for, you know, expensive vehicles. And sure, if you load up a Slate, it's going to be expensive and, you know, kind of lose the mission. But I think that, you know, the real, you know, magic of that car is being able to really have it be this blank slate. And I think that it's all in the name. It's kind of brilliant in my opinion. And as you guys have heard many times, I've said in the live streams how like I wish someone would make a bare bones vehicle, and now someone finally has done it. So you know, I've always thought that's been a good idea, and I'm glad that someone's finally capitalizing on that. And we'll see if it actually turns out to be a good idea or not. But I think Slate's still going to be okay. Obviously, sure, they could have probably gotten off to a stronger start if they had the tax credit in place. But I think even they, you know, I mean, they announced it this year after the election and everything. So, like, I think they already, you know, that was a fun marketing thing to grab headlines. And, you know, maybe there was a sliver of hope that maybe the tax credits would survive if, you know, Elon was running some of the show there and stuff. You know, but I think they kind of were anticipating it not, you know, working out. And I think that's why the car stands on its own beyond just being under 30 grand. You know, I think it's still going to be hopefully good for them. We'll see what happens. But, you know, everything else is going to be more expensive too. So it's, you know, with tariffs and everything else, at least they're building them in the States. So that'll help them. But you know, I think it's, you know, everything's gonna be expensive, and so they still could have a nice gap under Maverick and everybody else as well. So yeah, I'm curious to see how they do. I'm wishing them the best. And let me see. So Triton Car Guy says, before someone brings it up, yes, 18-wheelers do pay significantly more in road taxes due to the weight of the vehicle as opposed to normal passenger vehicles. Nice. Yeah, I'm glad that 18-wheelers do. And yeah, I know that there's all kinds of extra fees on 18-wheelers and stuff. And that's, you know, I think the 18-wheeler thing is the component that does need to be protected a little bit because, you know, without 18-wheelers, you really don't even have the products even getting to stores. You know, I think that Amazon just taking it a little farther with just the insanely quick, you know, local deliveries, where I think, you know, with the little delivery vans and stuff where it can be overboard because you're doing so many trips to people's houses every day or every other day, and, you know, this back and forth stuff. You know, I think that's where there's more room to kind of push for them to, you know, pay a little bit more. But I think, you know, whenever you're talking about 18-wheelers and stuff, that's where, you know, it's a very delicate balance. It's the same thing. Like you got to make sure you take care of farmers, because without farmers, you don't have food. And if you don't take care of truckers, you don't have products in stores, you know? So there's certainly some, you know, components there to factor into that. And I'm hoping that, you know, they get a fair shake, at least with the 18-wheelers, with this whole thing. Yeah, that's, I have to read more of the other parts of the bill to see what else, you know, is affected here. I've really just been focusing on passenger cars primarily. But if you have any other thoughts you've, you know, had over the past week or Truck and Cargo, or any info on the industry, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, you know, how it affects 18-wheelers especially, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. And Carlos says, thoughts on the new Celica. It won't be called the MR2 after all. 55 grand for the core, 400 horsepower, turbo, under 3,000 pounds. I'm excited. I hadn't heard all that. If that is new, yeah, I hadn't come across that. That just maybe came out in the past day or two. Maybe there's been something official that I missed. I hadn't seen anything. So I don't know if that's just like a, you know, some video you saw or something. Yeah, because I'm kind of, I think Celica and MR2 are going to be two different things. But we'll see how it all plays out. Yeah, maybe there's something I'm missing there, but I haven't seen anything confirmed. So anything else that you've seen specs wise, anything like that, I'm pretty sure it's just rumor mill stuff still, which has been going on, you know, for decades now. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I mean, that sounds like an interesting combo. I think 55 grand's a little high, but you know, we'll see how it all plays out. Yeah, because I don't feel like if I'm assuming it's a roadster, if it's something that everyone is expecting to be an MR2, but a roadster that's called Celica would be kind of weird to me. But you have to look into that. He said it was on Japanese magazine. Kurt covered it. Okay. Well, those Japanese magazines definitely are heavily rumor mill. There's a lot of stuff that they put out that is not credible. Makes for great videos. You know, Kurt's got a family to feed. It's whatever, but I would not take that as fact. It's a fun story. It's fun to speculate, but that's not factual whatsoever. So I would wait and see, once we get some more solid stuff. I mean, it's we'll see. We got the Tokyo Auto Show coming up here this fall. Hopefully, we get some debuts there or some info or something. But yeah, the only like legitimate sports car thing that I've seen running around there was the spy shots of the new Lexus LFR or whatever, which is like their GT3 racing car that Toyota's doing with the road car, homologation kind of version. That's been out, which looks wild with the proportions. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's like razor thin as far as the hood line and stuff. I mean, it is like really low, really. I mean, it looks like a car out of like an animated, like anime superhero kind of thing or something. It looks really sweet. I'm excited for that. And that is a real car that's been pictured on the road, and we know a lot about it already because of the GT3 racing stuff. But that's the only thing that I've seen anything solid concrete on for so far. But I know there's lots of great stuff I'm sure in the pipeline coming. I don't know anything, but just what we've seen and the things that Toyota has teased. They teased and one anime, their little anime show Grip. They teased Celica, they teased MR2, they teased all these things. So I believe MR2 is still coming. I think Celica is still coming at some point. What form they take, what they do with them, I don't know. But I think every one of those is really coming back at some point sooner or later. And so I'm excited, see how that all plays out for them. But I mean, this is why I love Toyota. They're just gonna, just be bathing us in 90s nostalgia, and I'm completely here for it. And Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. He says Charger's going to stop installing, or our restaurant's going to stop installing EV charging. No, actually, it seems like there's not any impact really to charging installations because it makes the companies money. And it's an expensive investment for sure. I mean, I was just talking to the owner of a dealership for the car we're going to be getting here about their investment in EV chargers on their property. And they're like, this is really expensive. And they're hoping, the company, the manufacturer continues to still support this, even if the government doesn't have subsidies and things like that. But like there was even an interview that I think Inside EVs or someone like that did with Walmart. Like Walmart is like committing to doing beyond the Electrify America stuff that they already have at some Walmarts. Walmart's doing their own charging network at Walmart's because they're like, this is a good business. Like, if we can get these people to come in, sure, it's a higher initial investment, but like it draws people to your property that otherwise probably wouldn't show up there, especially EV drivers typically aren't the type to frequent Walmarts a whole lot. So that's, a real perk for them. But it's just, they're the next gas station. Like, why do people do gas stations? Because gas stations make money. Obviously the gas company still makes money and all that as well, but like gas station operators make money, and a lot of it's just convenience stuff. But you have someone there, it's a golden opportunity with an EV because you are there for a longer period of time, at least for the next few years here until charging speeds get faster. But like, you have someone, like if they lock in and they're plugged in, if I go and fast charge one of these EVs, I'm plugged in, I'm probably sitting there for about a half an hour. And you, like, from a convenience store standpoint, that is golden because you have someone literally, like, you're holding them hostage essentially for a half an hour or more or less, whatever. But like, and this is why, like, around here we have Sheetz, there's Wawa, Buc-ee's, those kinds of places where you have like a full service restaurant kind of thing in there. You got, you can sell all kinds of stuff. They have merch, all these things, that's a golden opportunity because you got people that are wandering in. And like, for someone like me, I got, a kid. If I'm charging my EV at a Sheetz and then I got to wander in and the kid says, oh, I want a candy bar and I want the stuffed animal, whatever, all these types of things, like, that's all stuff they weren't getting if I was just doing a quick cannonball run, 30-second gas fill up and, peeing in a cup and driving, another 300 miles or whatever. Like, if you're, you lose all that money. And so when you can hold someone, it's golden. And so, and this is also why, you're going to see more and more of this. B. Mitchell said Walmart's also motorhome and RV friendly. Yeah, because again, it's good business. It is good business. And it's amazing that no one else has really figured this out. I mean, again, there are some companies that have, and I know like there's Starbucks did a partnership with Volvo a few years back in the Northeast where it's like let's put chargers at every Starbucks because these are kind of our clientele anyway. A lot of them are driving EVs anyway. And if we can bring them in there and they need to charge anyway, sure, well, I'll get a coffee while I'm here. Why not? That's, I mean, it's just good business. Yes, it's a high and expensive investment, but the companies that understand this isn't a fad, this is the way of the future. Walmart's putting in the next gas station. They're building in that stuff already ahead of the curve, and they have those investments. They got the electricity in the ground so that they're ready for this growth as it continues to happen, and it's absolutely it's a difference maker. I mean, even on road trips, again, I don't road trip in EVs a whole lot, but when I do, like for example, just last year I was I think it was last year, maybe the year before, I was in an Audi Q8 e-tron, and I was going down to Maryland to film. That was whenever they did the orange Supra and the blue GR Corolla for 2024, and then the AE86 version of the GR86 there. Those three were it was in a warehouse in Maryland that Toyota has. And so I road trip down and I had a Q8 e-tron, and I was like, oh, I'll go down in the Q8. It'll be totally fine. But like, where did I stop for breakfast on my drive? I stopped at the place that was next to the EV charger. And so obviously right now, EV market share is around 10%. So only 10% of people are making their morning breakfast decision based on whether or not they can charge. So 10% is not enough to spend millions of dollars on chargers, probably for a lot of companies. But for the ones that have the money to spare, absolutely, you bring in 10% more people than you did before, and they're spending money, and probably more money because they're hanging out there statistically longer than a random person walking in that has no time constraints, and they can just leave as fast as they want to. So but I mean, so I'm a case in point. And I mean, even whenever we did our road trip to the beach in the Mach-E back in 2022, we stopped at places that had food and bathrooms for charging, and we spent money at those places, versus gas stations, especially the really crappy, gross ones. You want to get in and out of there as fast as you possibly can. You don't want to hang around in there. But the smarter ones that have turned it into an experience and have really invested in those stations, that's where it's far more likely to convert people to buying other stuff and spend way more money. And that's why Wawa is exploding. That's why Sheetz is exploding. That's why Buc-ee's is exploding, because that's smart. And it's just, again, it's going to get even sweeter with EVs than it ever has been for gas. So I don't think that's changing anytime soon. B. Mitchell said, I didn't think Wawa was that far west. Wawa isn't really in western Pennsylvania here, but I travel enough to the East Coast to pop into Wawa's fairly frequently. But yeah, basically here it's just Sheetz. I think they're putting up Buc-ee's. I don't know if it was in West Virginia or somewhere. They're starting to expand those, and I'm sure it'll only be another 5 years or so before Buc-ee's probably takes over the whole country, because everyone again just loves them. And again, it's a great experience, and it totally makes sense, But great question. Thanks so much for asking, Jordan. And let me see here. So Luke says, sorry, late to join. I was talking to my friend. I don't know what it is, but today in Ohio and Indiana, I saw at least 20 new Camrys. Most were white and a couple were underground. Interesting. I mean, Camrys are selling really well, though. They priced it really well, and it's a great car. And I can see, why I think they do over 200,000 units of those a year. And so chances are you're going to start to see a lot more here, especially now there's a new one, more people wanting to upgrade and all that, especially again, before tariffs and all that. Excuse me. So makes sense. We're probably all going to see an explosion of like new cars, again, just because of the super cycle of upgrades that's kind of happened here this year. And then we'll see very few new cars, I'm sure, for the next few years after that. But Vishal says, our 2021 Highlander had a timer that popped up in the gauge cluster. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, Toyota did have that. Okay, it didn't pay attention to how much MPG difference it was, as I always turned it off when I drove it. Yeah, and it was very small because I left it on whenever I had the old Highlander for a week. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder how much it'll be. And it's like a tiny, tiny amount for sure. And E85 says the new compass start stop is fast. That's good. Yeah, there's a lot that are really good. Subaru's system is terrible. It's like really rough. Like the whole car shakes whenever it turns back on. It's like the first time it happened in a Subaru, the first Subaru I had a stop start, I actually thought I got rear-ended. Like I thought someone bumped into me. Like it was like so rough. And I complained about it in my reviews. If you saw those back then, it's not very well done, but some are very, very good. And let me see. Can says, don't you think that Mazda should update the Mazda 3 ASAP? Totally do. Totally agree. It's needed, more rear legroom immediately, basically. I mean, even when it came out, it was kind of on the small side, was it 6-7 years ago at this point? But absolutely. And I think, I'm guessing after CX5, that'll be the next one up. I think it has to be because everything else is fresh enough. They may jump CX30 in front of the line a little bit because that, sells more, and that seems to be dropping off a little more aggressively. So maybe we see CX30 get a redo first and then Mazda 3, but I think Mazda 3's got to be the next one for sure. Let me see. Luke says Kirk ripped the GMC Terrain Denali apart in his review. I haven't driven the new Terrain yet. I was really impressed with the interior when I did the static video on it. I did a tour of the new Terrain last year. I thought it was really, really impressive. The base one gives you a lot of standard equipment. I think it's a good value. And GMCs often do have, pretty healthy discounts too. But I know it's slow. I haven't watched his video. I'm not sure what his complaints were, but I'm hoping to try one out here at some point later this year. I was supposed to get a Terrain a few months back, and then another journalist ended up totaling it. so they don't have another one to replace it with for now. So I'm waiting for that review. But hopefully I'll get one here before the end of the year because I'm actually curious about it myself. I kind of am optimistic that it'd be, again, for its intended purpose, be pretty good. But yeah, it's interesting. And let me see. Chad says, or Lancelot says, bring back the spinners, not. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm sure someone will bring it back sooner or later, just again for nostalgia play, if nothing else. But Chad says, what do you think about car branded cologne? I just remember seeing them in stores about 10 years ago, but don't see them anymore. Not sure if they were good or not. There still absolutely are. I think like every time I go through the airport, there's like Ferrari colognes, and I think Lamborghini's got one. It's an easy cash grab. I think that's why they do it. Obviously, anyone who's like a cologne connoisseur is probably not buying, branded stuff like that. I've never, bought one of those, or, I do enjoy cologne from time to time, but the ones I have have never been branded ones as far as car companies. I will admit I got as a gift one time one of the 007 colognes, and that actually smelled really good. And I'm wearing it tonight because I went out to dinner and wanted to be a little fancier, so I put that on. And the thing I love about that cologne is that it has the little like spray part you push down. It's like a little twist thing, so it looks like a gadget where like whenever it's closed, it's like retracted, and then I like turn this little thing like a gadget, and the little spray thing pops right up, and it's kind of fun. So those types of things can make sense, but the ones where it's just a regular bottle and it just has Ferrari on it or whatever, like it's kind of silly. I think there should be if they're gonna actually do branded cologne. I don't know if someone's ever done this. I'm sure someone must have done this already, but like have it smell like the car. Like have a Ferrari cologne that smells like Italian leather. That could be like, I don't know. I guess some people want to smell like their car, but surely that would be a fun idea that would at least get some attention and some headlines and stuff. But like the new car smell, I mean, like some of these cars have really nice smelling leather, and that musky kind of smell, I think, could potentially work in a cologne. Maybe, I don't know, but I've never run across that kind of thing. Maybe I'm sure someone's done it though. If any of you know, anyone who has, definitely give it a shout out there in the comments. And XGL Services, Matt, in colder states like Michigan, do you find that the hybrids are typically running the engines more in winter for emissions? If so, what's the usual fuel economy hit? Yeah, they usually do because they still have to run, they got to get the heat going in the engine to actually, generate the heat. I believe most hybrids don't have heat pumps. Some plug-in hybrids do, so you're able to, thankfully have heat in those. But yeah, and this is why you actually see whenever I review hybrids in the wintertime, I'm usually disappointed in the fuel economy. It's usually pretty low. I mean, it still is better than a regular gas car, but you definitely lose out on a lot of the efficiency there because it's just running the engine way more. So definitely, it's a law of diminishing returns if you live in a place that's, a lot more cold more frequently. But it's still a net positive, even in the cold. And then again, you factor in the warmer months where you are again getting a much better boost over non-hybrid. It's still, in my opinion, no matter how you slice it, you're still going to come out ahead. And even, it also, part of the problem as far as why I get a real bad hit in hybrids in the wintertime is that I very rarely drive long distances. And, especially when you're talking about winter hybrid driving, if I'm just driving 10 minutes to the grocery store, that engine's barely getting warmed up. So that, I'm barely using the hybrid system the whole time. So there's some of that makes it worse, especially for me, because I live really close to everything for the most part. But if you're someone who, you're up in northern Michigan, or you're up in, a little bit of a further place where you got to drive half an hour to get to Walmart, you got to, drive long distances to go everywhere, then you're still, I think, going to end up eventually, having a better, experience than I would in my review. So my reviews, especially for hybrids in the wintertime, are really pretty much a worst case scenario. And I discuss that oftentimes in my videos, but I still do get disappointed because, if the EPA estimate says this is what, you should be getting, and it's 5 or 6 mpg less, which is what I experienced in some of the ones in the wintertime, like, I think Corolla hybrid was a lot lower when I had that over the winter time. Even in the late fall, I had the Crown Signia, and that I think was like 5 or 6 mpg less, I think, too. I think it's supposed to get 39, and I was getting like 34. Still getting 34 in a nice, comfy wagon is, pretty good, but, it's not quite as good as, again, the sticker states. So, but yeah, great question. And Lance Watt says Montana only requires mileage when you're getting the title for the car. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, place like Montana, it wouldn't work, I guess, as far as the mileage thing. But for PA especially, B. Mitchell said that is a weird PA thing. All they want in Minnesota is your insurance policy number and your money. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I guess that maybe PA is the only state that does that. Well, at least, again, for PA laws, still, PA should do it the right way since they have the mileage every year. It's just lazy policy making to just slap a, flat tax on people. But Digifex says, I'd like to reward Elon for helping the election by buying a Tesla. I don't know if you're if you're joking or not, but enjoy your Tesla if that's your true feelings there. And Chaz says, with tariffs, we're all becoming armchair experts on supply chains and weird laws. Kind of reminds me of COVID. Yeah, it's these things that people never had to worry about. You're right. And now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, people are thinking about supply chains, and that used to be a largely invisible thing in the background that no one ever talked about supply chains unless you were getting, a master's in business or something. And otherwise, if you're, no one ever talked about supply chains, and yeah, all these laws and everything. Yeah. I mean, I used to never be really very political, and, I wasn't always keeping tabs on everything and looking at policies and stuff, but I feel like it's just like things have started affecting our personal lives more than they have in the past, when politics could just kind of be in the background in many cases. I mean, there was still a lot of screwed up stuff and things that if you, were into politics, it could still boil your blood, but it was, not quite as in your face, I think, as things are these days. And of course, social media doesn't help that anymore. But yeah, you're right. Same thing with COVID, where people are thinking of all these things that, they never thought about before, for sure. And B. Mitchell says, also, the technology exists for EVs to get their data read across the grid. So pay as you play can happen. This was a project my sister was working on at Minnesota Department of Transportation before she retired 12 years ago. Interesting. That's crazy. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways, again, to be equitable about these things, and to, if we truly wanted to have fairness as far as subsidies and as far as taxation, all that stuff, there's much better ways to do it, especially with modern technology, than the way things are being done, for sure. And but it's never about fairness. It never has been about fairness. It's always about who's special interest, who's lobbying, who's got the, more influence, who's got, the bigger pockets, deeper pockets. It's all, it's obviously not as not as black and white and simple as some people maybe think or thought it seemed. I used to think things were so black and white, and that things were logical, and that there wasn't gray areas and all this other stuff. And it's so funny looking back on like my own views 10 or 15 years ago, and my confidence in the free market and all these things, and being like, it's not the way it works. Companies aren't benevolent. They aren't out for your best interest. It's just about the corporate greed. And I mean, that's gotten worse in the past, 10 or 15 years too, but that's always, what it comes down to. It's just how can, people squeeze people to get the maximum amount of money. But anyway, and Carlos says, yeah, LFR looks insane. Yeah, I'm very excited for that. And Trenton Car Guy says, a big problem in the transportation industry has been the lack of range for the long haul trucks. Most long haul trucks can cover more than 600 miles a shift before being legally forced to stop. Also trying to fit the recharge period into a 10-hour span to accommodate the driver's test period, not to mention infrastructure issues. Oh yeah. I mean, I think it makes no sense to really do EVs for 18-wheelers. Until we get to China levels of EVs, if we're doing BYD levels of, megawatt charging, these 5-minute recharge times and way better efficiency from batteries, maybe once we finally get, the solid state stuff in production vehicles, maybe, but I think, actually, again, I was just having a conversation with someone about this the other day, who kind of keeps tabs on the hydrogen industry a little bit more. Like, hydrogen is I don't think it makes much sense for passenger cars, and I don't know if it ever will. But for trucks, it makes a lot more sense because you've got that quick turnaround time that you often need, and you still obviously have, the need to, you can kind of work around the infrastructure a little bit better because you can just have it at truck stops, and it's a little more controlled of an environment versus, it's not like an 18-wheeler can just pull up at any service station and fill up. So, you have less variables there, and less of a need to have things be quite as widespread as regular passenger cars. So I think that, and this is why, Hyundai especially is working really hard on the hydrogen truck kind of thing. And, I think there's a real potential there for hydrogen. Same thing goes for ships and, planes and things like that, where, it's probably gonna be really hard to have electric for those types of things. So doing it, with hydrogen could be a nice alternative in the future. And let me see. And thanks for giving your thoughts there, Truck and Car Guy. And B. Mitchell said Walmart's, yeah, we talked about that earlier. And Chad says bring back Circuit City as a charging company. That would be fun. I like that idea. It'd be fun to go back to Circuit City someday too. And B. Mitchell said, okay, we covered that already. Sorry. And Truck and Car Guy says they actually just opened up a Buc-ee's about 20 to 30 minutes outside of Phoenix. Nice. And everyone, I've never actually been inside of a Buc-ee's. I've driven past them on the highway, and I've been driving in Texas, for Toyota things and stuff. But I've never actually been inside when I need to stop, because everyone's like, you need to stop and like see the inside of a Buc-ee's and experience that. So I'm going to do that the next time I'm in Texas, I think. But B. Mitchell said they're doing a new location in Madison, Wisconsin. So they're moving north. Wow, that's cool. Like I said, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before they try and take some of the Sheetz lunch. That their Sheetz are like on every corner around here. It's crazy. So I'd welcome other alternatives instead of having everything be a Sheetz. It's like I could like walk out my front door and like close my eyes, and within a 30-minute walk, I can probably run into 3 Sheetz. It's just like they're everywhere. And let me see. Trent Cargo says they have a few brand new Camrys in their fleet. Yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of that. You can see a lot more, rental cars and stuff for sure with that new one. And let me see. Daryl says Buc-ee's recently opened its first location in Virginia and Mount Crawford. Nice. 65 Buc-ee's Boulevard. Nice. Well, thanks for sharing. And that's cool. Yeah, so maybe that's what I was thinking of, but I feel like I thought they had one in West Virginia, maybe not. Cam says, hi, Matt, super late tonight. Thanks for stopping by, though, Cam. He says, any opinions on the Accord 2.0 T manual as a first car? Anything to look out for? I've heard good things about them. Sadly, I've never driven one. I begged for a press car back whenever they were, new, but they didn't really have manuals very much in the press fleet back even then. They didn't promote it a whole lot. The only thing I've heard is there's some rev hang. I did have a manual 1.5T Accord, And, there was a lot of rev hang in that. That's the only thing I didn't like about it. Otherwise, it was great. And I think with the tune, you can fix the rev hang. So that should be fine. The only other thing I will say is that car, even without the manual, any Accord 2.0T, I mean, it depends on where you live, but it really needs a limited slip differential. I mean, it just roasts tires. It's the same thing. Sonata N-Line does the same thing. Kia K5 GT. Whenever you're putting, 250 plus horsepower through the front wheels, you got to really have an LSD if you want to have it be remotely civilized, and so that's the only thing. Because also, like with Accord and stuff, because even again, Accord automatic that I had with a 2.0T for a week, it tries to like kind of prevent that bad behavior with just the traction control, and then that just slows you down and pisses you off, and it's not a good solution. And so that's the only thing. I mean, I think there are some people that have put LSDs in manual Accords. It's probably kind of a pain, and I don't think it's a super common mod, but there is a workaround if you absolutely do desperately want it. I would say, I mean, I guess if you need the extra space of Accord, that's fine. If you want the manual Accord experience and you don't need as much power as the 2.0T, I really enjoyed the 1.5T. And again, with a tune, you probably get pretty close to 2.0T power levels. And, you have, no rev hang, I think, hopefully with that. So if you're open to tuning, maybe a 1.5T with a tune would be a little bit better and maybe a little more manageable because you have maybe a little less power. Otherwise, though, I mean, what I would just tell you is get a Civic Si. I mean, they're, still I think there can be enough space for most people. Civic back seat's pretty good. You can get the hatch, which is super practical. The trunk's fine in a Civic. So if you want a good manual Honda, I just get an Si because you got the LSD there. I'm assuming there's a reason why you're looking for Accord instead of Civic. If you want something a little more refined, you could also go for a lightly used. I mean, I guess this is a little more expensive probably than a, last gen Accord, but you can go for a used Integra if for some reason Civic's not cutting it for you. Integra is all the same goodness as Civic Si and a little more with the adaptive dampers, but again, having the LSD, which is very important. So that's really the only thing. Otherwise, I love that generation Accord. I love all of them. I think the hybrid's fantastic. I think the manual's fun for the 1.5, and even just regular 10-speed automatic Accords are really well done. Actually, I really enjoy them a lot. I think it's a really solid value on the used market. They seem to stand the test of time pretty well as far as high mileage ones doing, holding up well and all that. So I like Accord a lot. I think, they've aged really well. You got the screen with CarPlay and all that, so you're good. Nice knobs and all the interior stuff is pretty nice. So I love Accord. I think it's great. Hopefully it helps you a little bit, Cam, and thanks for stopping by. Trenton Car Guy says, okay, talking about the Buckies there. Wheatman says, my BMW X5 has a stop-start, and it's not bad. I don't mind the 48-volt mild hybrid system. Yeah, I think 48-volt also helps because some of the more rudimentary stop-start systems just aren't smooth. But whenever you add the 48-volt thing in there, then you can do that light coasting. You can do, a little bit more of an extended stop-start, and they are really smooth. I think the Germans have kind of nailed it the best. It's sometimes hit or miss though. Like I had a Mercedes that was really rough, but then like in the nice, like I was in the E450 All-Terrain last year, and that I actually couldn't tell when the engine was turning on. It was so buttery smooth, and it was so I had the stop start system on the whole week because I didn't even know it was doing anything really. It was great. So yeah, I think the Germans have done it the best because they also and they're just having to do it for their regulations and stuff. So they're forced to kind of get better at it as well. But yeah, I think they do a pretty good job in most of the German stuff. And let me see. Mitchell's surprised about the Buckies at Buckeye. And Linda says you don't report mileage in Virginia when you register either. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna have to look after this and see if there's any other states other than PA that require that. But yeah, every year you got to put your mileage in. And I'm not sure even why, because for gas stuff, I guess it's just for tracking purposes as far as, tracking how many miles Pennsylvanians drive their cars or something. I don't know. Interesting. I learned something new tonight. Thank you, everyone. And actually, I see we're almost out of time here, so we'll do the last few questions and sign off here. But Jordan says, bring the Taurus back slightly lifted like the Toyota Crown. That would be fun. And there is, Yeah, I mean, they did flirt with the Taurus X name, for what was Freestyle, and then Taurus X, and then went to Ford Flex, all kind of the same basic thing, But and I think China has a Taurus X, if I remember correctly. There's a wagon crossover version of the Taurus, I'm pretty sure, in China. Um, yeah, someone can look that up. There's something like that, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that here. I think it'd be great. And Dragon Car Guy says, I just looked it up and it's not open yet. It's under construction. Should open next year. So I'm a bit wrong. Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I'm curious to see when they put the first one in Pittsburgh, but I'm sure it'll be sometime soon. And Strass Edge says, hey, Matt, are you ever going to do a great deal on used vehicles video again like you did for the G80? I don't know. So I did a few of those and I had planned to do more, but the interest level seemed like it dropped off pretty fast. Maybe I just picked the wrong cars, but I picked cars that I thought were truly like the best values, especially at that time on the used market. And, it just seemed like people were excited at first, and then it did drop off quickly because I did like the Julia one, and that didn't do nearly as well as the G80 one did. I'm open to doing more of them. I think that also these days, and as we see the used market continue to inflate, it's going to be hard to tell anybody that anything is a great value because everyone's still going to have the sticker shock of, well, this was thousands cheaper last year. That's going to be universal for new or used. And I see the hearts there. I appreciate the support. So I mean, you guys get it. And that's, and this is why, even with some of my titles recently, even with cars that are a relative bargain, I don't even really am putting bargain or value and those types of things in the title as much anymore. And that's just because, if I hook someone with a title of like, wow, this is a great value, and maybe they haven't been in the car market, in the past year or two, and then they see, oh man, this is 50 grand for a small SUV or whatever, and people are just like, this is not a good value no matter how cheap it is compared to its competitors, relatively speaking. It doesn't matter because it just sounds like a really big number. So I think there still obviously are going to be good bargains, but are they going to be as good of bargains? That's kind of the challenge with those. I'm certainly open to them. And I think also the other thing too is I'm so busy with the current video schedule that it's hard to add in new things because I don't really need, if I had free time to do that, that would also be something I'd be like, sure, let me experiment with that. But I am adding, at least one new video, kind of video, I guess, this month. You will see. I haven't really talked about it yet, and I'm going to keep it to myself until they're actually posted up. But I'm going to do something similar to what others are doing, but a little different. And it's a very like no edit kind of quick thing, and something like that where I can like hit record, film, and upload it, and pretty much, not do anything else. That's the kind of stuff I can fit in. But anything that involves research, anything that involves, taking videos or screenshots or filming myself, with multiple takes and, bullet points and all kind of stuff, that's the kind of thing that's, just a big lift for me right now because I'm just trying to keep up with doing the car reviews, staying up to date on those, doing the articles now for Car Buzz that I do, part-time. I'm really working 2 jobs now. So that's, it's really taking a lot of my time. So that's why I'm not able to add in anything. And I've been wanting to do junkyard walks, and I swear, I promise you, I will someday do that. I will definitely have something probably like in early September because I'm going to actually be working with Pull Apart, hopefully, to do something with them on their property and doing, another junkyard kind of walk thing, at least that one. But I want to do them on a regular basis. It's just finding the free day and the free 3 hours to go out, film something, and come back. Even if I don't really edit that very much, it's just that I'm truly every single hour is accounted for in my schedule right now. So it's a good idea. I'd like to try it someday. And if I have something I'm passionate about that is a good used vehicle deal. I'd like to try those again, just to see, because again, like, as I have a very strong passion for affordable vehicles for people, and not always just showing off fancy expensive stuff, and so that is something that is near and dear to my heart. So it's just going to come down to the free time, and if I have the free time, are there deals that I still feel passionate about? I mean, I think the ones that I've did have aged well. I think G80 is still a fantastic value. I think Julia and Stelvio are still some of the best values out there. So I think those videos have aged well, and I think I still stand behind those. As far as, those are, in my opinion, probably still two of the best deals, in the car industry still, as far as used stuff goes, just for the sheer amount of car you get for the money, and the goodness you get for your money. But there's certainly more that I could highlight. So we'll see. Thanks for bringing that up. Because again, there's another thing. Like, no one has mentioned those videos since I posted the last one, which was, I don't know, 2 years ago now or something. Which also shows there's maybe not a ton of interest there, but I'm happy. Thank you for showing interest in that. And if that's something that others feel like they'd like to see as well, then that's something that maybe I can, again, try and work in at some point in the future here, once I have better work-life balance, I guess. And let me see. Jordan says, we, Chad and Jordan, live in Milton, Florida. There's a Dodge dealership here, but we haven't seen a single Charger EV on the lot. Also, a Kia lot with only 12 vehicles. Wow. That's surprising that a Kia lot doesn't have many vehicles. So I haven't seen that around here, but if inventory is already starting to dry up, I know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, because the tariffs screwed everything up, and there's going to be a gap. It'll refill itself back in because the tariffs got relaxed in a lot of cases, but there is going to be less supply. And again, we'll see this at Christmas as well, because all the supply chain stuff got screwed up. So there's going to be less supply at Christmas of regular, Christmas trinkets and stuff that are all made in China because of that whole disruption. So there's gonna be some of those things that do continue to happen throughout the year here, but I'm guessing those will all be short-lived for the most part. And let me see. Cam Jam says, who is a car reviewer that you haven't met but would like to? That's a good question. I'm very fortunate that I've met most of all the ones that I would want to. I mean, I guess car reviewer might be kind of underselling them, but I'd love to meet, James May, Richard Hammond, Jeremy Clarkson. So that's the first thing that's sprung into my head whenever, I read that question. Chris Harris would be cool to meet too, because I think he's just a phenomenal driver. And I feel like even just, being a fly on the wall whenever he's discussing cars, could be I could learn a lot, that way too. So that's probably it. I mean, I'm very fortunate again that I've met most of my car review heroes. I'd like to meet Henry Cashpool someday, because he is still so brilliant with so succinctly articulating how a car feels while driving phenomenally well in very fast cars on crazy phenomenal roads in many cases. And he also just seems like a very chill and like very down to earth kind of guy. I've never met him, but so I guess he's probably another one of the top ones there. And those are all the ones off the top of my head. But yeah, most of the others I've met, and they're all awesome for the most part. Again, it's far easier to say everyone that I love in this industry than the ones that I'm not a huge fan of. And Cam says, don't really like the 1.5T because they have had lots of oil dilution issues, already risking it with the 2.0T with the turbo, trying not to get boring and get a Camry. Gotcha. So the oil dilution stuff was certainly an issue. I mean, you probably have done more research on this than I have recently. So, if you've come to a conclusion, that's fine. I had thought that the CRVs had the oil dilution issues, and some of the early 1.5Ts had that. I hadn't seen that in newer ones. Maybe it still is a problem. That's unfortunate if it is. I have seen some 1.5T Civics that have done a lot of mileage. There was another medical courier kind of car, which again is very high mileage in short periods of time. So maybe age-related things would be an issue, but oil dilution you think would be an issue that would pop up with mileage as well as time. But like there's people who've done 250,000 miles in current gen Civics with that motor that are like flawless. So again, everyone's luck is different too. But I don't know enough about it. So if there's still issues with that, then yeah, I mean, I get you don't want to have a Camry, but I mean, Camrys are great too. There's some, really fun Camrys, TRD Camrys, really fantastic. Raphael has one and loves his. So that's, I think a very fun Camry if that's what you're after. And if you want something punchy and you're worried about the oil dilution, I mean, I don't know, how those Hyundai and Kia motors hold up long term, but I think if you've maintained it well, especially if you're buying new and you're getting something that's really well taken care of, or even a used one that has good, maintenance records, I think that could kind of do the same kind of thing, with the Sonata and the K5. But yeah, yeah, I think if you're really worried about reliability with oil dilution and stuff, then maybe I think Camry TRD would be a great choice. I think it's worth a test drive. Might change your perception of the boring thing. Maybe not. You can, maybe just give it a try and see what you think. And Chad says, thanks for another great chat. Send some prayers for cheap repairs as our Fusion is in the shop. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully it gets fixed without too much expense. And yeah, it's always crappy. I'd be curious to know what went in the Fusion, whether it's just kind of a fluky thing or if it's something other Fusion owners should look out for, because it's always good to kind of share experiences about that kind of stuff so that if it's something other people need to look out for, or people who are shopping for stuff can stay away if Fusion has some issues. But I think Fusion's been pretty reliable from what I've seen, especially the hybrid version seem to be really solid. Andrew says GR86 or BRZ. I'm in the GR86 camp, and I did if you watch all my GR86 videos, especially I did a week with the GR86 performance pack last year after having the BRZ TS like a couple weeks before. So it was a really fresh kind of comparison. And yeah, you can watch that video for all of my thoughts on how it compares directly. And all of my, you'll hear a lot in all of my week with videos, especially of week with GR86, week with BRZ. Check those out. You'll hear me discuss it a lot more. But the reason why I like GR86 better, it's more tail happy, quicker throttle response, and just feels more controllable at the limit than BRZ, where BRZ was a little snappier for me. Still very fun, still very good. Really enjoyed it a lot. I took it around autocross course and took it around, which there was a track, I can't remember. Lime Rock, I think, is where I took the BRZ around. So, I mean, I've tracked both of them. Both are fantastic on track and all that. But personally, on the street, I enjoy GR86 more. Let me see. E85 says that you should try and hook up with the owner of Koenigsegg. Yeah, Christian von Koenigsegg. I know people that have, chatted with him, but never have myself. I actually did. I walked past him at the Geneva Motor Show in 2011, and that was whenever he was, I think, debuting the Agera. I can't remember, or some one of the editions or one of the new versions. I don't remember. But he was there because I was walking around Geneva back then. So I mean that was a long time ago. But have walked past him, and I think Pagani was there that year too, if I remember correctly, because I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so I did. Yeah, I remember walking past Wyro when Wyro first came out, and Horatio Pagani was standing there talking to someone else. I didn't talk to him, but I was within earshot of Christian von Koenigsegg and Horatio Pagani. So that's the closest I've ever gotten. But that was, even just that is, pretty amazing in my book. Jordan says, thanks. Thank you guys for watching. Jawad says 2023 M340i or 540i. I reviewed both, not 2023s, but I did a 2020, I think it was 2021 M340i, and I did a 2020 540i. So if you're talking that last generation of those, I have reviews on both. You can watch those, hear my thoughts on them. Personally, I mean, 540 is the better cruiser. M340i is the better sporty, backroads kind of vehicle. So it depends on what you're going for there. Both are fantastic in their own ways, but I think that's kind of what it comes down to. If you're looking for a comfy cruiser, 540. If you're looking for something sporty, or M340i is the way to go. Both are fantastic, though. Jordan says, still hoping Ford brings the lithium into existence. Yeah, the manual electric two-door Mustang. I'm certainly sure that's not happening in the next 3 years here. Maybe it'll happen in the 2030s we'll see what Ford does and see how policy changes or doesn't change after 2029. We'll see see how things play out here. But anyway, thank you all so much for joining here. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great week here. Stay tuned again for some updates and some more good reviews. Stay tuned. I will be again covering new CX5 here this week. So stay tuned for my thoughts on that and all the info on that here this week. I'll be having a video right when the embargo drops, although embargo is a weird time. I don't know if they announced embargo time yet, so I'm not going to say what it is just in case. But embargo time is kind of weird, so I probably technically won't drop it straight at the embargo time, but I will have it up, whenever it's going to be basically viewable hours for most normal people. So anyway, stay tuned for that here this week. And thank you all so much for hanging out. And hope everyone has a great week. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday. So stay tuned if you want for that one on Wednesday for an hour. We'll do those here, continue to do those. And thanks so much for a great chat here. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.